Oh, snap. What's your name again?
Zach,
And where you from, Zach?
San Antonio.
San Antonio. I've been there. It's an awesome place. I love it there. Great Mexican food.
Yes.
What's your favorite Mexican spot?
Eric's Tacos.
Eric's Tacos. That sounds like a little crappy hole in the wall. Isn't it?
It's a food truck.
All right, so what we're doing is we're trying to get people to pronounce this word. Give me your best guess.
Jutuan.
Jutan.
Hutaon.
Jutun.
Jutuan?
Jetawan.
Jutan.
Hutaun.
It's got the soft J.
Jutan.
Juatun.
Wonton. Whoa, that's pretty good.
Jutuan?
Jutuan.
In Austin, Juhata. In fucking Boston, Jutuan.
It's different in different states.
Juton.
I'm gonna say Huton.
Hutan?
Huton. Jatuan.
Jutuan.
Watuan.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with which one?
Watuan? So it's a W. Watuan.
Jutuan.
Jutan?
Wonton.
Wonton. Okay, there's a W. You see the W.
Juton.
It's actually really close.
No. Huan.
Huan?
Juan? Shit.
Jatan.
Yo, that was perfect.
Johnson. I don't know.
It's pretty close. It's pronounced Jatan.
I think I pronounced it cooler.
So, what do you think it means?
Close cousin of the crouton.
I have no idea.
It's like live or like be alive or something.
Hell, I don't know. Space. I mean, not space. Fun, excitement, energy.
No, you're right.
Something, Austin, something.
Something about like being equal. I don't know why.
It sounds Spanish. Maybe a Spanish clothing line.
It's like town, like tuna, and Jupiter. So like.
Are you drunk?
Form of banana.
Gooch or like crusty butt. I don't fucking know.
So it's Jatan. What language do you think that is? What language would you say that probably is?
Indonesian.
Indonesian.
Either French or Portuguese.
Probably Irish, since it's Irish.
Irish. Canada.
Asian.
The Asian language.
South America? No. South America? South Africa. South America? Yes. South Africa.
Okay.
Japanese.
Japanese. How come?
Because it starts with a J.
I'm gonna say South America.
South American? Language of South American. Okay.
Arabic, Farsi, Hebrew.
That's the first time we heard that. But you kind of like combined three totally separate languages.
Yeah.
Arabic, Farsi, and Hebrew.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with her. She's like, I don't know.
She's super smart, so.
She's from Panama, so I feel like she's.
Oh, okay. Because people from Panama, okay.
Like, she knows all the ethnicities.
Got it.
Indian.
Brazilian.
3, 2,
But even though Indian
1.
isn't there a bunch of
We
different-
are live. What is up, everybody? Tuesday night. We're here. We're going to do another stream. We're going to have a little conversation, talk about what's going on, see how this goes. You're watching Young Lion TV.
Young lion, everywhere I look, they're dying. Everywhere I look, they're dying. Young lion, everywhere I look, they're dying. Everywhere I look, they're dying. Young lion, won't you get up and start fighting? Everywhere I look, they're hiding. Young lion.
Yeah, man. We are live. It's Tuesday night. We're here at True Sound Studios like we always do. And I want to say a big shout out to everybody that's in the chat already. I see Emma. What's up, Emma? Can't wait to get back on the soccer field. Elena, our cousin, that's Moochie, right?
Yeah.
Evelyn, what's up? Anita, Blair, what's going on? Everybody who's watching in the chat right now, you know, just say hi, give a thumbs up.
Shaniqua over here, Garcia.
Shaniqua Garcia, oh, she's watching her hubby. Yeah, we appreciate all of you guys that are watching right now. You know, we try to do this every Tuesday, try to have some conversation with the men in our lives and one woke female named Rachel, and we talk about things that are going on in the world and talk about like what it means to us and try to make sense of things by the you know, the ways that we have processed it and the things that we believe in and all of the things that we've experienced in life. So if you like the conversation, if you think it's a good thing, you should share the video. Let the algorithm know that people are watching, and you can also go to the Patreon and become a member on there. You can go to our website, jatan.com, and you can stream music and get merch and all that good stuff.
Jacob said, nice hoodie.
Oh, thank you, brother. You know, this is an old one. My wife got me this because it was on sale because after they won the championships, right? And then they won the Super Bowl. Everybody wanted the Super Bowl hoodie. So the championship hoodie went like, the price went down.
Right.
So she got it for like $5
That for you right there.
But you know me, I don't care. I'm not like, oh, yo, you ain't rocking the Super Bowl hoodie, so you're not a real fan. Plus, this was the only clean shirt I had at the time. So, but appreciate you, Copes.
Short.
So I want to give a shout out to who we got with us this evening. We got the brother, Mr. James Garcia, Mr. Bill Wright, the half black, half Indian with the Spanish last name. And we got my brother, Jake Evans, over there. And then last but not least, holding it down is Miss Rachel Rota. And Mom just checked in. What's up, Mom? But yeah, so let's talk about what's going on, man. We were talking about a bunch of stuff before the podcast started, which we always do.
We always have a good pre-podcast conversation.
I know, and we're like, man, we're wasting all this good content. But you were talking about the Ahmaud Arbery thing, just making fun of Jesse Lee Peterson and his
Jesse Lee Peterson and his baiting.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
My take on it is, it's such a just terrible situation all the way around. You know what I mean? Because it's something that it's like one of the, you look at it, it's like one of the biggest fears of black people right now. It's like the fact that you feel like that there's like this evil white man, like KKK, whoever it is, especially like in the South, that's gonna hunt you down if you ain't looking. You know, you're walking through the wrong neighborhood, and you know you're gonna get, you know, AKA, you know, lynched. You know what I mean? In that sense. So I feel like the story speaks to that fear, which is why people have jumped all over it. You know what I mean? Now there is the other nuanced parts to it that a lot of people don't want to talk about. You know, I just saw a video today where they had a lawyer on there explaining the laws in Georgia and
which was that law they had, which was you have the right to detain a suspect.
Just a citizen's arrest, especially if they're if it's a federal offense and if they're fleeing the scene, you have the right,
but not engage.
Right, but you can
detain.
You can detain them. Yeah. So you know. Did they technically break the law? I mean, the fact that it ended the way it did is tragic. Of course, you know what I mean. And I don't think they should have chased this dude.
No,
down.
I don't think they should at all.
You know what I mean?
think to me, the race element is there, and you know the media is always going to spin that way out of control.
Right.
But the fact that they had it for that long, and the powers that be, the attorney, the prosecutors, you know. They really didn't do anything until that video surfaced.
I think that's what I think, that people,
the corruption.
That people aren't talking about, that it speaks more to the corruption and the covering up in the police force that you see a lot.
And I think that just speaks to the brotherhood type stuff, because they were both, you know, involved with that.
Right.
Investigators and prosecution. So, or attorney generals.
Yeah.
So yeah, it speaks to that.
Yeah, the corruption. I think sometimes, you know, the race element is hard because, you know, we all recognize what that is.
Right.
But I think sometimes in the conversation, you're not focusing on what really happened, which was the corruption too.
Mhm.
Yes, they killed that guy, they
Right.
murdered that guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I think it's the
Wouldn't-
corruption.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not like it's definitely they put themselves in a
Put yourself in a
situation where
it's not first degree. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I
Right.
don't think they premeditated it. I think it's let's get our guns and go get this guy. And because the dad
He's getting
was
away.
he's getting away.
He's getting away.
Right.
It doesn't help when you look at them that they just like fit the perfect stereotype.
They do fit the stereotype.
Did you ever see a picture of these dudes?
Right.
Yo, it's like the perfect stereotype of what you would expect some racist Southerners.
But you
to
know,
look
I
like.
wanted to say something about that because I think what we're seeing is we're essentially copycatting the stuff that we watch, which is the TV shows, right?
Mhm.
This society has more shows that are based on crime. The cop shows, CSI, the Rescue 911, Cops, all these things that we watched that have programmed us to want to get the bad guy.
Right.
So we have this element in our society where there's a lot of shows that are programmed around the central theme being crime,
Right.
stopping crime. He's up to something. Look at all the shows on TV. There's like about 5 or 10 CSI, shows. So I feel like all of that triggers people. They feel like they want to catch the bad guy.
Right.
They want to, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I don't know these people personally, so I can't say what motivated them, whether it's race or not. But I feel that there's such an element in this society where people just want to be involved in whatever, like they feel the need to go catch him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
Which is where you go wrong.
Right.
Feeling like I gotta put a stop to this.
I got to put a
You know
stop
what I
to
mean?
it. You know what I mean?
But
And-
you also the other side is you see the just emotional spin that a lot of the divisive type news
Right.
people. What?
our favorite guy.
Who?
What's it? Don Lemon.
Oh man, I don't even know what his take. I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine what his take is.
I didn't.
yeah.
I saw like it was like a commercial or something. So Leslie was watching it, and then she changed it, and
No, Rachel's over there freezing.
Every time I put my arm down on the table, which is very cold, I'm like, oh no.
yeah, I saw something where he was just like, "I have no words" or something. I didn't really. That's
Yeah.
all I saw, but it was just like I was laughing.
I just hate when people turn it into this whole frenzy that it does that make it does more to discredit what actually happened. You know what I mean? When people start tweeting out and headlines, you know, you can't even jog and you're hunted. It's like,
Right.
that's not what happened.
Right.
So now you're giving fuel to the people that want to say, oh, it's fake news. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just like the Michael Brown thing, hands up, don't shoot. You know what I mean? Like that became the narrative. And it's like, then you find out that that's not true. And it's like, so what were y'all talking? How? We don't never know what to believe because everyone just goes on these emotional rants.
We're kind of like looking forward to what the celebrity have to say, but I think they need to refocus it back to what happened and seeking, like I said, seeking justice. But I would like them to go after the township.
Yeah.
Like go after. I would like them to prosecute.
They need to get to the bottom of why this was kept
for 2 months.
For
For
2
2 months
months
they didn't. You know what I mean?
No one knew about this and nothing was done about it. You know what I mean?
In fact, one of the lead investigators said that they were in the right because he attacked them.
Right.
And he pretty much dismissed it like, oh, this is nothing.
Yeah, he said that they did nothing wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what they need to do.
I want to say what's up to Gada Yagi. Said, hey, fellas, what's up? Stiz just checked in. What's up, Stizzy? Yeah, but I agree with you. It needs to be. We need to go deeper with this because just prosecuting them and feeling like it's justice if we get them. Like the problem is all of the people in the chain of command. That said nothing to see.
Nothing to see here.
You know what I mean? And this is something that happens in all aspects of the government.
Yes.
You see it all the time.
Yeah, this is a small piece of what happens on a bigger scale.
We have to live by one set of rules, and you don't have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's
It's the corruption of the police.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's the corruption of police, politics, the justice system in general. Like
Right.
we talk about it all the time. Like you even going in for a traffic ticket, you know that everyone they all work together.
Yeah.
The police are working with the judges that are working with the public defender that's there to tell you to
It's
just
a money
pay.
grab.
Yeah, it's
a
like-
money grab. They're not interested in stopping crime. They're interested in the monetary gain.
Right.
You know what I mean? And in this particular instance, they're interested in protecting one of their own because he actually worked with one of the lead investigators.
Right.
You know, the dad. You know, so
Did you guys see that video from that cop that it went viral where he was talking about?
yes, I have.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where he was talking about how he's seeing police officers overstep their duties and arresting people for being at parks or being
Right.
at the beach. Like you're sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution,
Right.
and he's seeing a lot of police officers pretty much violate that. You
Right.
know, and he was basically saying like, don't let these politicians force you into doing something that you shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And then
Yeah, that's the whole both sides thing because you see people feel like they got to prove themselves.
Right.
You know?
But this is the thing but this is speaking to what you're talking about the chain of command. So at first when that video goes up,
They praised him.
they praised him. They said, "Oh, we love what you did. Great job. Way to speak out and stand your ground."
Then the governor saw it.
The video goes viral. The governor sees it. Chain of command happens. He gets a call from the chief like, "You got to take the video down." You know what I mean? And now it's too late because he's like, "I'm telling people that this is what I believe in. If I take it down,
Right.
then I'm a
I gotta
hypocrite."
stand on it.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
he told them he can't take it down, and he ended up losing his job.
Right. And what are we finding out? That essentially the higher ups are giving these orders that they themselves are not even following.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's it. So for people who are wondering, like, well, no, you got to follow the protocol. The people who are giving these limitations or protocol or saying, hey, you can't do this, we're finding them at gyms, we're finding them at the hair salons, we're finding them in certain places. And when you question them, they get angry and lash out against you.
Or they say that they have a right to do it.
They have a right to do
because
it.
I'm a public
Right.
figure, so I have a right to get my hair done.
Right.
You know, the dude that what's his name, Neil Ferguson, the doctor that came up with the whole study that the 2 million deaths was based on to begin with, that caused the whole quarantine. He had to step down from his position. He works for the UK. He had to step down from his position because he was sneaking in his girlfriend during the quarantine.
Exactly.
He wasn't even following.
But that's
the
why
orders.
that's why you can't trust the news, because that's an important factor that people need to hear.
Right.
And when the news, these corporations and control that, don't tell you the full scope of things, you're not really gonna know. The mass public, there's so much coming at us that if we don't stop to be like, wait a minute, so you mean the guy who came up with the study is sneaking in his girlfriend or whoever it is?
Yeah.
You mean
his girlfriend who's married, by the way.
His girlfriend who's married, yeah.
His mistress, yeah. That's
right.
Is that the article there?
Right. Because these things are only relegated to like page news. It's not on the actual news.
They're not talking about it.
They're not talking about
But
it.
yeah, he had to step down from his position because he got caught because someone saw him doing it.
Right.
Just like Bloom, what was De Blasio?
De Blasio,
got
yeah.
caught at the park, and they're catching people doing this stuff. Cuomo got caught. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So you're telling us one
And
thing,
he
you're
had
doing another thing.
coronavirus.
Yeah.
Right.
Quote unquote.
Right. He was supposed
This is a huge one because this guy, like I said, this we're following orders from a guy or instruction from a guy who is essentially lying. You know what I mean?
Dude, when you look at the initial reports where everyone was saying, projected 2 million deaths, 2 million deaths, 2 million, it's all based off of his
All
study.
based off his study. This should be on every morning news, every night news.
Yeah. And when you look into him and his record,
Right.
it's not even great.
Right.
Like this dude has been involved in some shams over the years.
Right. And this is where the problem is, because you see, the thing is, the news has tricked us into the expert idea. Someone's so expert. This expert.
We
This
talked
expert.
about that last week with the
Everyone is an expert,
bullshit
and
news.
exactly. And none of us are really checking to really find out how are they coming up with this study,
Right.
or where are they getting these numbers from. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I think that's sort of what the cop was talking about.
Yeah.
The police officer was fighting against a tyrannical government, because
Right.
this is the setup for it. And like I do feel that this is an exercise. I feel this is a test and an exercise to see how society does respond.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That Project Veritas video where they showed the staging of the fake testing. Remember that?
Right.
So you always hear people when they talk about, that's a conspiracy theory, blah, 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 blah. They always say, who would do that? Who would just go along with that? The hospital workers would have to be involved. you see it happening in that video, and they just go along with it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, they told us that we had to pretend for the cameras,
Right.
and we just did it.
Yep.
Like they don't think nothing of it in the moment, you know. So it's like people
Right.
will do that.
Did y'all hear about? And I'm going a little bit off, but it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting about this book that spoke about. It's like I think it was like out in like 1981 or something.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, are you gonna read it?
Just a little part
Go
of
ahead.
it, just because it's funny. So this is from Dane Kuntz,
Yeah.
1981, and it's called. Let me see. It's called The Eyes of Darkness. So this is a little part of it. It says, okay, my mom just texted me, sorry. It says Chinese scientist named Li Chen, right, defected to the United States carrying, I can't see what that says, records of China's most important dangerous new biological weapon in decades. They call the stuff Wuhan 400.
Yeah.
Like, and then it says, because it was developed at their RDNA labs outside the city of Wuhan. And it was the 400 viable strain of a man-made microorganism created at that Wuhan thing. And it's called Wuhan 400 is the perfect weapon. Then it says, on another page, it says, in around 2020, a severe pneumonia-like illness will spread throughout the globe, attacking the lungs and bronchial tubes. Sorry, it's like little, and resisting all known treatments.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, were they trying? Is that what they were going for?
Right.
Because it didn't even go that,
Yeah.
go that far. But it's just funny that it's in here and it's called the Wuhan. It's called Wuhan 400.
Right.
Like, yo, what are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. The odds are probably, impossible. Impossible. But you see this really happening. You see, and then you start finding out like the way China let it kind of get out and covered it up for 6 days and let people leave the country, but no one could come in.
Right.
And then we're giving fake. How about the story with the president of
Tanzania?
Tanzania.
Yeah.
Like the dude straight up played them.
Yeah.
Sent them in tests from a piece of fruit and a goat, and they said, "Oh yeah, came back positive."
Exactly.
And
that's what I'm saying though. This does not make headline news.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
This does not make headline news. So this tells you.
Yeah.
This tells you that you're not really getting solid information.
And the thing about that dude is that dude's a doctor. He's a chemist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they could try to say, "Oh, he's not an expert," but he's a chemist.
Right.
So he knows a little bit about
right
what he's talking about.
Yeah, and this order reminds me of Star Wars. Order 66, but it's like 6666.
6666. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's a test run on how the society will respond to.
Yeah, I mean, did y'all ever look at the Event 201?
Yeah.
Did you ever look up that? Look up Event 201 on YouTube. Like, dude, this was in November. You have to see this. It's it's like taking that book and then running a mock version of it in front of a panel of people that talk about how they would deal with it. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. And back in November.
Wow.
Or October or November. But it was last year, and it's called Event 201, and it talks about a virus that came from pigs or something that spread around, and talk about shutting down the economy, all this stuff.
Yeah, the whole bats thing.
Yeah.
And they need to, like I said, they need to gauge the response of society. How are people going to handle it?
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Global pandemic exercise. Now, what are the odds that literally
it began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
So this is like a mock.
It's like a mock, and then
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
So it's like, you get the idea. It's like a trial. It's like a trial. It's like everyone gets together and talks about how will we handle this. You know what I mean?
A little practice run.
A little practice run, and then a month later, the practice run starts for real. You know what I mean? And then you start seeing them implement all these things, and judging how everyone. What were you gonna say?
So this is interesting. This is the description. But so this video is selected moments from the Event 201 pandemic tabletop exercise hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Right.
On October 18th, 2019 in New York.
They got their name on everything.
Their name is on everything.
Name is on everything, and that's part of it. They say government, but it's really globalist.
Right.
It's not. It's about the wealthy globalists who really control economic. They have an economic hold on countries, on people. They're really the ones that are behind this. You know what I mean? And then the countries are giving their orders, but that's really held by a bunch of billionaires. That you know what I mean?
Right.
And you know who knows what's promised to them. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we were funding, we were spending money on funding the lab, you know, that was working on bat coronaviruses in Wuhan.
Right, and that's what's hard because in today's world, where do you really go to find solid news?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because these corporate entities, CBS, NBC, Fox, all these other big news corporations, they're controlled.
They're beholden to their shareholders and their executives and the agenda of the politicians. That
I mean, you could put anyone in a lab coat and say, "Hey, this guy's an expert."
Yeah, like they did with those healthcare workers that were, you know, the photo ops of them stopping the protesters. Like,
we don't know.
We don't. Like, how do we know that they didn't just? Well, the lady caught on. Did you see the one where the lady caught it on her cell phone camera? Them staging it.
No, I didn't see that.
See if you could find that one, Rach. There's a video of when some of the people were out protesting the shutdown, wanting to get back to work. You see, she's out there just showing. She's got her cell phone camera out, and she's like, "Yeah, these are all the people. They're out here for liberty. They're all in their cars. They're not. They're not like out, you know." Ignoring social distancing like a lot of the news is making people believe. They're in their separate cars doing like a car protest. So she's out there filming all the cars, right? So as she's filming, you see a dude in scrubs run up in front of the cars and hold a sign, and a bunch of dudes with cameras snapping pictures real quick, and then he runs off. And she's like, "I got you." Like she catches it. You know what I mean? She's like, it's a staged, protest, protest. Like because they just want that picture to be in all the papers.
And that's what you respond to.
Right.
They figured out that that's what people are going to respond to. You're responding to the first initial thing you see.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of the picture of the woman with her child dragging her child across the border.
Yeah,
that looks like, you know, something that when it really wasn't even the border.
Right.
You know.
Yep. Or the little girl that was crying in front of Trump, that was a fake picture.
Yeah.
Well,
that was like, how do you think that's real?
But people did.
Yeah.
The kid in the cage that passed around all the news.
Yeah.
That was someone staged that as a protest.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Yeah, it's like
That's what's hard, because I do understand people's frustration, because not everybody has this desire to dig into things and find things out. Some people are just very regular in a sense, so they don't really want to be bogged down by that. So they trust that they're getting a good source of information, I guess. And it turns out not to be true.
But I think that's why people who know, if you know, those who know, you kind of have a responsibility to speak about it, or even like
expose it in a way.
Expose it, pray into it, you know.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying to him the other day. I was talking about, I think there are there's levels to information, because certain people, this is the first time that maybe they're seeing certain things that don't match. And some people like us, we've kind of been on this journey for a long time. Maybe we didn't have all the information, but we've been on that journey where we're like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense and this doesn't make sense. And along the way, we're finding things that kind of help us see a little clearer. And for some people, they're like, I don't even want to pay attention to that, until years later, they're like, this seems familiar.
Right.
And I've seen this before. And the one thing I noticed was people were sharing that clip of all the news reporters saying the same thing.
Right, the scripted.
They put up the one guy saying something, and I think it was to the effect of, "Don't trust this,"
right,
or whatever. And then another person, and another anchor, and another anchor, and then the whole screen was just filled with anchors saying the exact same thing. These are all newscasters from different.
I think one of the phrases was, "This is a threat to our democracy."
Yes,
and it was just like over and over and over again. It was like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, people need to pay attention, like, because like you said, there's levels. And now I notice myself like noticing when I hear like language being introduced.
Right.
Threat to our democracy was something we heard so much, and then it becomes imprinted in your brain,
right,
where you really start thinking that that's reality. And now it's like you hear social distancing, trust the experts.
It's a trigger.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And the biggest thing, it's a trigger in the fear, where you feel like you have to do something to negate it in your own way, or you're scared. It's just it's a feeling of like anxiety.
Right. Right. Well, someone said this, that the school bell was picked on purpose because it was to condition kids to prepare themselves to work in factories. Okay, to when the bell rings, it's time to start. When the bell rings, it's lunchtime. When the bell rings, it's over. They're conditioning you to work in a factory environment. This is when the industrial age first started.
Right.
They needed workers. They didn't want farmers. They didn't want people working on their own entrepreneurship. They wanted to condition you into becoming a worker. And we needed to build a way where we can have people transition from childhood right into that factory job.
Yeah.
So how we would do that, we have to condition them with certain things. And certain things have to be instinctual. We don't have to explain it to them. So when you hear the bell, show up at work, show up to school. When you hear the bell, time to eat lunch.
Right.
When you hear the bell, the day is over. Whether it's school, time to go home, or it's time to clock out for the end of the day.
Right.
Those are social cues that if they can condition you from the time you're little.
It becomes psychological.
It becomes psychological.
Yeah.
We would never think about it that way, because it seems to be the motion in life, the wheel that's just the way life is.
Right.
But if you really think about it, the industrial heads at that time, they would get together. And I've always said this: if you work at McDonald's or you work at a regular job, every Monday or at least once a week, you're having a department meeting. What makes you think that the world heads and the people who really run this world, the bankers, the industrialists, the globalists, are not getting together to plan how this world works?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's a simple thing.
Right.
If your job can do it, the people who have money, they have a vested stake into how this thing turns out.
Right.
And if you don't think that, then I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
You know, in my view, I think that's how it was. You know what I mean? We would always get, when I worked in the retail world, we always got an agenda set out for us. That was a plan for the store.
What's our plan this week?
What's
our goals?
Right. And I use that. And that's why I said to people, this is not hard. Even if you're not a conspiracy theorist or whatever, just use deductive reasoning to think, this is how this works. There has to be a plan. Okay? There has to be somebody benefiting from this. You know, so how does this work? Is this just that the healthcare officials want to see things work out the best way? It could be. But could there also be a monetary gain, an economic gain or a global gain, yes, there could be that too.
Right.
I mean, when you dig a little bit, it doesn't take much digging to see that is a lot of times the case.
Right.
That's a lot of times what's going on.
And there's a monetary gain, but even above that, like you have a gain in another way.
Right.
You know, because like you look at a lot of these people who are prospering off of what Bill Gates is doing, but that's not his goal. You know,
Right.
he has a different plan.
Right.
But so there's tiers to
Right,
it. you know?
right,
Levels.
Right.
Levels,
So
man.
they'll gain the monetary thing, and he gets to control global overpopulation.
Right.
Which is what his dad wanted to do.
And people don't even know that.
You know.
People don't know the connections that.
And that's the thing. Like when you look at them, they're always trying to. It's almost like I was watching something last night, and they were talking about how back in the day when radio was introduced, right?
Yeah.
It became like a leveler.
Mhm.
Because they started listening to these people who they just saw as like these kings,
yeah.
and then they're looking at them like they're listening to what they're saying and like, oh, these sound like idiots.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
But
it became.
Isn't that what the internet became also?
Right.
Yeah.
The internet
form of
became
that.
that
Yeah,
leveler
right.
as well,
Right.
because now you have access to information that was held from you before.
Mhm.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So there's always that thing of they want to bring how can we get back control?
Right.
So to me, it's like those are the plans. Like we have to look like the elite.
Yeah.
You know.
But the thing is, when people are so overwhelmed with not knowing what to think,
And I think that's what it is. You're right. That word is right.
yeah,
Overwhelmed.
they're overwhelmed,
And I
so they
think-
just kind of tune it all out.
That has to do with being poor.
Mhm.
Because really, like being rich is really about wisdom.
Mhm.
You know, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and being poor is like it's funny because in the Hebrew, like poor means at the beginning. It means going back to the beginning. So it's like being void of everything, but what you came into the earth with.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
That's kind of like the extent of being poor. You know, and there's like I think it's 29:13 Proverbs says something like that the light shines on both the poor and the oppressor. You know, and even that oppressor can be translated as the deceitful. You know, and it's basically what we're talking about.
Yep.
You know, but it's about what are if they can muddy that light. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what
For
they did.
you.
That's what they did with the radio. Like they
Yeah.
figured out a way. People don't know. Like this is literal. Like
It's breaking.
But I'm talking about like Operation Mockingbird. You say stuff like that, people are like, "Oh, that sounds like some." tinfoil. No, this
Yeah.
is like something.
This is actual stuff.
They were in. They did a Senate hearing. I think there's clips of it when they had to speak in front of Congress in the 1970s, and they admitted to the fact that they were using radio to program people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And TV too. You know what I mean? This is a literal government program.
And that's what happens every time. You have creative things
Yeah.
that spark and come into existence.
And that's where the corporation idea, because the people who ran that were, it was corporations, the news station at the time. That's what they were doing it.
Right.
Maybe not to the scale that it is now. You know.
But
Go ahead.
let me go back because what I'm saying is that you have people who are sparking something. It's creative, right? Even a creative idea is a synapses in your brain. It's the spark, of life,
Neurons.
really, in a way. Yeah. Neurons are between nerves. You get that spark. That's the creative thing that's happening.
That's what Elon Musk is trying to tap into.
Right. So that thing is always taken. As soon it's like, oh, all right, let me try to take that away.
It's hijacked.
Because, there you go, hijacked. They run interference because it's always, and people, because they're already subjects or subject to the oppression, their mind is, well, we'll give you this and then you'll give it up.
Right.
And that's what always happens. But it's actually like a breaker in terms of light. Think about it, like the radio comes into creation and people start talking on this radio, and then you start seeing they don't know how to control it at first, so it becomes an exposer, a breaker, a light. You know what I mean? And people start seeing things in a different way. Then they want to hold on to that. They want to dim that light.
Music was the same way.
Yeah.
And that's why when we talk about like what happened with what's his name, Jim Morrison, and all those people in Laurel Canyon that were literally connected to
like almost every
counterculture
hippie type
artist from the psychedelic movement in the
late
60s and 70s,
New Age movement.
Yeah, like they were all connected to military and government people. You know what I mean?
Well, I want to go back a little bit because this concept isn't new, right? The Romans invented this.
Right.
It's called bread and circus.
Right.
Right. So to distract,
I don't even think they invented it.
You know,
I don't think
but
so.
they definitely pushed it.
They
were the
I think
first.
they were the last empire to really use it.
Right.
You know.
Well, because they were really the ones them and the Greeks were the purveyor of sports and entertainment.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, the Egyptians had it, but not to this level.
Right.
So while their society was being destroyed economically, they came up with the concept, hey, listen, this is how we lull the public to sleep.
Mhm.
Let's give them the games.
They're starving, but
Yes, they have no idea that we have destroyed the economy.
Right.
It's a government full of pedophiles and warmongers. So if they find out, they'll kill us.
Mhm.
So what we should do is give them bread and circus. And after the Great Depression, they introduced the same concept.
Mhm.
Okay, and thus when most of the football teams and basketball teams, sports was being pushed. Franchising of sports was
Right.
being pushed. It was entertainment to lull you to sleep. If you have something to watch on TV, you're not really gonna. That's time that you should be researching spent watching TV.
Right.
You know, entertainment. Then I hear people say this all the time. Remember the day when kids used to play outside? If you think about it, the video game era is a form of bread and circus for kids,
Mhm.
right? Because sports was lulling men into sleep. I'd rather watch sports than study the word or
Right.
whatever it is. Then in the 90s, it was the introduction of video games,
Video
to
games,
another level.
Mhm.
2000s, it was even worse. Now we don't see kids outside anymore
Right.
because the kids will lull to sleep. The creativeness that kids would have been experiencing playing outside or
Exploring
or
just
doing
wonder-
stuff,
yeah.
that ability has gone from them because that form of bread and circus have been down the line.
Right.
And now we see it with women and the shows. Right?
Yep.
There's a number of reality shows that are not based in reality at all,
Right.
but it's a form of bread and circus.
Isn't that
You know?
kind of like Peter Pan? Or,
Yeah.
Or the Pied Piper?
yeah.
You know what I mean? What are you doing? You're putting something, you're putting some magical thing in front of them, blowing this magical pipe to bring them into a magical land.
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't really exist.
Right.
But it's all for your entertainment.
Right.
You know?
And for those of you who are watching and may not be familiar with these terms, just look it up.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're not easily accessible because you're not going to hear that throughout your life, but it is forms of the way these societies control their people. You know,
Look at church. Hasn't
Yeah.
church become like just another entertainment type thing?
Absolutely.
Not,
But
not
that's been,
every
that's
church,
been
but
stripped
I mean,
away now.
but I
which
mean
is-
on a grand scale, though.
Right.
You know?
a form of it, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would say the majority of it has become this.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I spent that entire time looking for that video with the woman who catches the fake news,
Yeah.
right? I knew you had sent it to me. I couldn't find it in my phone. I just typed in everything on YouTube and everything on Google. I'm like, they ain't going to give it to me, right? It's not here.
Yeah.
I go to bing.com. Immediately it comes up with the same
Wow.
keywords that I just used
Wow.
for Google.
That's crazy.
Like-
yeah, I don't even use Google anymore.
You know, like
I don't
it's
because
not reliable.
they suppress everything.
Yeah.
What do you use? What search engine do you
I
use
use
for the
Bing
people?
or DuckDuckGo. You ever use
Right.
DuckDuckGo?
That's a good one. Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
let's check this out.
There you go. You can see. Hi. So y'all can see. What's this flag say here? It's definitely not. Oh. There's staging. I'm glad I got this. A stage media op. Look at that. Staged on Facebook Live. Don't publish it in your paper. You're a fraud. They just staged one of those medical pictures with the guy in his scrubs and got it on camera. You're a fake.
And the crazy thing is,
You're
like,
a fake.
people wanna.
It's not just.
They're playing on the emotions of people
They
because
are.
they know people want to feel bad for the healthcare workers. They want to feel like
Right.
these are the heroes that are on the front line. So it's like we want to feel for them, and they're out there and they're standing up to these protesters, so we're with them.
Right.
But it's like they're not. That's not. We don't even know if that dude. That's a guy in scrubs.
You can buy scrubs online.
Exactly.
You know. Like,
Well, that's the genius of the people who are at the head of these things, that they're able to take the least considered, meaning the healthcare workers, and make them the face of it. Right. Because they know that they can't. No one wants to see a big, wealthy person, or a bank owner, or a business owner be in distraught over his money. They're not going to relate to that.
Right.
But if they can trick you into believing that this poor healthcare worker is the true victim here,
Right.
you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna be triggered into feeling something for them. That's kind of what the goal is. You know
It's
what I
all
mean?
manipulation. It's all witchcraft. It's all, how, like Jamie says, wizardry.
Yep.
How can you play on people's emotions?
Right.
And that's the problem. I mean, it has to be destroyed. There's something that I was watching. I mean, I was looking up and came to my mind because a lot of times, you know how you see like about being strengthened, right? There's something in, if you don't know what's going on, you're gonna miss it. But so I was reading Isaiah, and Isaiah, people always quote like Isaiah 40, the end of Isaiah 40, where you'll be lifted up with wings of eagles. He'll strengthen you, right? But towards the middle of that, it says, or the beginning of that whole thing, what it's talking about, it says, who is equal to God, right? And then another part, the next one, Isaiah 41, it says, basically borders and coastlines, don't get in the way.
Right.
What does that mean? You get what I'm saying? Because it's about people coming to the borders, coming to the place where, what happens when you cross that line? There's conflict, right? But also equal, like, what do they want to keep you down because they don't want you to be equal. And what God is saying is, I will make you equal. I will level the playing field. I will level your ground, and that's what's so amazing about what God does, because all these people with all these plans, Psalms 2, he laughs at the plans.
The plans, they plan a vain thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But we have to, and I'm definitely talking to people who, you say you believe in God, you say you're a Christian, we have to believe these things. We have to seek, if we don't understand it, seek these things, because these are the things that overcome the world,
right?
Overcome all the schemes and all the scams. Because it's crazy.
It's endless.
Yeah,
and you can get overwhelmed and overcome with fear, because
and that's the point,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in the world's idea, if you rely on, again, the experts, and you rely on billionaires and certain people who are propped up to be the spokesperson for society, they'll tell you that the ultimate goal is going into a natural man-made utopia.
Right.
We can all fix this, monetary wise, economic, health wise. That's the goal they're going for.
Right.
You know what it is? It's funny because we were just talking about that, like the bread and circus.
Yeah.
It's all about an illusion, but it's about the god Pan. The Pan God, like pandemic,
right.
Pandemonium,
you said your TI moment right there.
Yeah, right.
No, but it is.
No, I know that's where it came from.
That's where, they got that word from the god Pan, and he literally leads you into it. Peter Pan, leads you into this never land, this false Arcadia.
Right. We all believe that. Yeah. I mean, we all, as young men, we all believed in certain things, voting for that guy or this person.
Yeah.
We, at that time, when our minds were not as sharp as it is now, we didn't study to show ourselves approved. A lot of it was, we believed in the concept of an earthly utopia.
Right.
We're going to get out of this.
Yeah, and not even, in voting and this, it's just like, well, live the dream and
the quotes.
Social justice for everyone, and it's like this concept that you're gonna
follow your heart,
right. You're gonna fix all these things. You know what I mean?
It starts with you and whatever it is,
Yeah.
And it does sound good, but it's not true.
Right.
It's not true.
Yeah, but when you're young and you don't really understand a lot of things,
right?
you don't really have a grasp on a lot of things, but you think like we all been there where you're younger and you think you know everything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You think like you got it figured out.
Right,
Your parents are dumb as shit, and you got them, figured out because you've learned how to manipulate them over the years or whatever.
Right.
But you don't realize that there's so much that you don't know,
Right.
and don't understand about how things work. You're
And
you're only coming from the ignorant perspective that you have.
Yeah, that's the key. You think about like
hey Tiff, what's up?
You think about I don't know, a pizza. Well, I'll say a house, right? If that house gets blown up into many pieces, you're not going to know what it was.
Right.
There's no, now you can try to put them pieces back the way you think. And even what you put back that's very minimal, especially when you have no knowledge of the whole, right? And I'm not talking about a whole, I'm talking about we don't have any knowledge of the whole. So now we're trying to put back this piece and be like, yeah, that goes here and that goes there. And you could totally use something in the wrong way.
Right. Right.
Think about like people, there's been shows or stuff about people like trying to use something in total opposite way of what it was really supposed to be.
You ever see those clips of kids trying to figure out how to use like a rotary phone?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. It's like they just totally can't.
If you're separated from it, if you're divided from it, and you got all these little divided pieces that are broken up, you're not going to be able to do it. But when you actually have somebody leading you, all right, put that piece there, because they know already. They already have the image of the whole in their head. You know, and that's so you have these it's like that orphan mentality, you want to prove yourself, but you don't really know what you're doing,
right?
But you got somebody who loves you, like, let me help you out,
right?
I actually know what's going on here. Let me put the pieces back together for you.
Right.
You can do it, but I just want to show you,
where it goes, where the pieces go. Yeah.
Right. And that could be a lesson for parenting right there.
Yeah, for real.
Your kids.
No, it's definitely. That's the point. Like, it's the father,
right?
And we're the kids.
Right, it's important parenting. I was just thinking about something. It's like society gives us these ideas of what's good and what's acceptable. Like you take something like, like cards, like the Hallmark cards, right? On paper, those words are so sweet. They're so romantic. But if people looked at the offices that people write that in, you know what I mean? Because I'm not coming against gift cards or anything like that. I'm just saying, look at it. We see the end result. We see the paper and the writings on it and the sayings and the sentiments, and it's beautiful. The words are beautiful.
Right.
But if we could take a glimpse and look into every desk,
the guy that's just like an alcoholic, just like cranking out cards all day. He's like,
you mean the world.
Like, Frank, you got to meet this deadline.
Right. You know what I mean?
He's like, mean the world.
Right. What we're seeing is not actually what's happening over there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. It's like, what do these dumb idiots want to buy? You're everything. You're the world to me. Some dumb
and it becomes about that. It becomes about the sentiment, and you're so focused on, let me get this, instead of expressing myself.
Right.
You need the card. You need this. You need whatever is attached to society says these things is a signal for love or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You never think, whoever thought about the guy writing this or the lady writing it?
Well, it's like what we were talking about last week about diamonds and how that became this symbol of love, but it was all propped up to be that.
It's propped up.
And so we've all just kind of bought into the fact that this is how you show someone love. What's this right here?
That's old, but that's the ladies. That's all the ladies they had back in the day, writing all the beautiful Hallmark things.
Of course they had a bunch of ladies writing that stuff. Right.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think one of those ladies, you think her husband would appreciate that card as much as you would? She'd be like, get that out of here.
Right.
Susan wrote that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They know exactly where that card came.
We're really the thing is, we're being imprinted on on ideals. And that's why I think a lot of people don't want to go deeper, because, like I said, the concept of the conspiracy theorist or whatever it is you've been made fun of, right? You're an idiot, whatever it is. But I think we're living in a unique time where the people that spin these things, they can't control how fast the information that we're getting.
They're trying to.
They're
desperately trying to come up with ways. Like we were just talking about Google. like you can't really use Google anymore.
Right, right.
YouTube is going down the same path.
But they own it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
going down the same path. I mean,
Right,
Twitter,
right.
same thing. Facebook, even like we're streaming on Google, we're streaming on YouTube and Facebook, but you know, we've noticed our videos getting suppressed. They taking our videos down sometimes just because of what we talk about. It's like certain things are just off limits, which is crazy when you think about it. Like you can't say these words or else it's totally just gone.
And what we're saying is there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
This has happened before. There's always been suppression of truth. This
Right.
is not new.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't panic. Don't run away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not to be in fear of it. It's just
But it's definitely something new that can happen if you seek it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's
yeah, that's the thing.
something different.
But that's the thing.
There's
like,
always hope.
Oh, yeah.
That's what actually motivates me is like the hope in seeing it. What?
Be over here struggling to set Bing.com as my homepage.
Yeah.
Instead of, because every time you open it, it's like, it's almost a conditioning, like Google flashes
Google?
in your
Yeah,
face.
Google. That's true.
This
That
is
is true.
your
Yeah.
pathway to the world.
It's branding.
You know?
Google it. It
Yeah.
became a verb.
Yeah. That's
you
true.
never hear anyone say Bing it. Can you Bing that for me?
Right,
get out of here.
Right,
Bing.
right.
But yeah, like you can't trust Google anymore.
Right.
You can't, like people have shown, have you ever seen them videos where people will type in, you know how Google auto completes certain phrases?
Yeah.
And like if you type in something, it literally tries to lead you down a path with the autocomplete.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I one other thing I want to touch on was even in the sense of like, you know, last week you and I were talking about Alyssa Milano and the Me Too movement
Right.
and the accusation of Joe Biden and what it is. And, you know, there's this desire when it's egg on your face and you want to rub it in. And I learned this from Tim Pool. And I think that we have to suppress the desire to want to be like, I told you so. See,
right. Look at you.
I think
hypocrite.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, because it's turned into this. I got
It's
you.
a got you. It's a got you.
We all doing it to each
Right.
other, and I feel like he had a good point. He was like, because he corrected his partner. He's like, when he was trying to tear her character. She's a 2-bit actress. He's like, that's irrelevant.
Right.
He's like, forget that. There's no need to
Don't
insult her character.
attack her character.
Don't
because
do
then
that.
you're just playing into the same game.
And that's become part of this social media thing. I'll
Right.
get you.
Right. That's what Twitter is.
That's what it is.
Twitter has become like, it's just, how can I tear someone apart?
It's the first time we have
You
the
know what I
ability to reach out and speak our
yeah,
mind.
right. And get a bunch of
It's
retweets.
funny because it's like it's literally like the land of the curse manifesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Like pull down, pull you down, like everybody pulling each other down, and nobody really is getting anywhere because you're just all getting pulled down.
And listen, I had to reprogram my. I'm not on Twitter or any of those things, but I do have a bunch of channels that I follow on YouTube, and I respond to certain things. But I realized, like, I wrote this a little mini novel,
right?
Because I disagree with somebody,
right?
But while reading it to autocorrect it, because you know,
you got some typos in there.
Yeah, typos. I realized, what the hell am I doing?
Bro,
like, what am I hoping for this to happen? Like, the person going through it, like, all right, time for bed. Let me just check. James Garcia.
Yeah, right. But it's a reactionary response that we have. Like, it's like you see something and you want to react to it. That's what these platforms feed off of.
Right.
They need that engagement.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
They have figured out that people want to give their 2 cents.
Yes.
And give them the opportunity.
Give them the opportunity. You know how many times I'll see a post that I'm just like, it's so wrong, it's so off, and I want to, and I'll type 2 words and be like, man, no.
Yeah.
Forget it. Like, it's not worth
That's
it.
what it is. That's what it is. You have to fight that.
Yeah.
You have to fight to say, they need to hear my 2 cents.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Unless they do need to hear it.
Yeah.
And that's different. But
our friend Peace posted that Plandemic documentary.
Yeah.
She just posted it on her Facebook with this long disclaimer in front of the video about like, I don't necessarily believe in this. I trust the GOAT. I love our health workers. I trust the experts. You know what I mean? But this is interesting. And it's like 200 comments of arguing underneath the video because people just like, it just turns into, you know, I got to tear you down.
But even why do you feel like you have to explain so much? And I see that so much. Like people will post something and then they just paragraphs and paragraphs of just explaining themselves. And it's because you're really insecure of the position that you really don't want to be in anyway. Or you're just mad and you're just venting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But either way, it's like you're not confident in what you have in a sense. You're second guessing yourself. You know,
you want to stand for something, but you want to do it in a way where you don't put yourself out
you
there
don't
fully.
sound bad, but it's only in your eyes, right?
Well, or in the eyes of people,
And you're afraid of being attacked.
right.
You know what's coming.
You know people are gonna think this about you.
But
It's like we've
but
created.
you feel like you're okay with it if you do it in a way that you think it's okay.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
But that goes back to what I was telling you. It's a form of inner self projection, which is you are putting a disclaimer because you know what you would be doing.
Right.
You would be on that chat typing in your 2 words. So you're pre-thinking what people are going to perceive this as. So you're trying to put almost like well, I know you're going to think this, but let me explain it.
Right.
You can't control that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is one that I want to read real quick. Proverbs 16:2. All the ways of man are clear and innocent in his own eyes. But the Lord weighs and examines the motives and intents of the heart and knows the truth. And I think that's the thing. Like, we're always like we overjudge ourselves, you know? And that's really like the filter for me. Like, I'm realizing, like, think on these things lovely and pure, you know? Philippians, what does that mean?
Right.
That's our filter in terms of like, all right, what has God done for me? You know what I mean? This is the thing that I focus on. Because you can get to that place where you're like, oh, well, you can be like very like false. We were talking about this earlier, me and false humility, where it's like,
I'm humble.
One day I'll be at this place,
right? You
know, but I'm not there yet,
right?
You know, and it's really like you're downplaying yourself. It's like David, all he did, this is guy David, and everybody knows the story of David, you know, but all he did was literally work in what he already was given.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't work in anything else. He didn't try to do some amazing thing. He already defeated a lion, defeated a bear, and saw that it was God who did it. You know what I mean? And that's what he worked in. And he didn't go outside of those parameters. And we always feel like, I think that's where we get self-conscious, where we're like, well, people can perceive this way, so I don't want you to perceive this. So especially in the Christian world, like what I'm saying is that like this is a big hindrance. All glory to God.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, but it's not my pride. It's not. But at the same time, it's like you ain't hear somebody like David saying that. It was like, this is what it is, and I'm standing in it because I know it, because I experienced it in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing that I work in. I don't have to work in anything else.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And for me, it's like when we're over-explaining ourselves because we don't really believe it, and we're not really trusting in what we have.
Or we're more worried about what people think of us than standing in what we know.
What we know.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
So we're like trying to work in almost a parameter that we have no business being in anyway.
Right.
You know, a territory, so to speak, where we're like, hush, I'm gonna step in here.
Right. I'm gonna dip my toe in real quick, but
Right.
that doesn't mean I'm gonna go swimming.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, you're looking for public approval.
Right.
And you're looking for that is really a thing, aside from, they figured out the thumbs up or the heart or the emoji or whatever it is.
Right.
They figured all of those things, and it is a physical form of what he's trying to talk about.
Right.
You're looking for,
approval in every way. Every time you post that selfie, you're looking at the number of likes. How many did this one get?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's giving you the approval. And they've also realized that people feed off, and all of this stuff feeds off of that emotion of wanting to get approval from people, like social media in general.
What are you doing? You're destroying your emotional sensors, your emotional indicators, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to be able to discern what's going on in your life, because you're going to be anxiety
it's like
is
porn. the
Right.
porn stuff
Yeah.
we talk about, like you desensitize yourself to a certain extent because now every day, like you're on Instagram looking for the endorphin rush.
Right.
Yeah,
You know?
right. Which is true. That I mean that is very true.
It's definitely like porn in its own way.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. It's
Well, they call it food porn.
Yeah.
You know, this porn, that porn. Like that's it's almost like subconsciously we know what it is.
right.
And we just
Right.
keep feeding it.
Right. Well, for a long time, pornography and drugs was the addiction that everybody was familiar with.
Right.
No one ever thought social media or
Right.
those things would have the same kind of effect, but it's close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In fact, it's like I think it's in a way a little bit more advanced now because at work you could they can.
And there's a lot of people that are starting. The addiction starts at a much earlier age.
Much earlier age,
You know
right.
what I mean?
That's true. That's true.
So
That
think
the
about
age,
that.
yeah.
Like you're being indoctrinated into this idea of
Right.
the endorphin rush of a notification on your phone.
Well, Shaniqua had to do it with my 2-year-old. We're teaching her. We're going through numbers and letters, and so we're essentially continuing like sort of a daycare format because we don't want her to we know that when she goes back she has to readjust, and that's short time.
Right.
So we get her up in the morning, feed her, and then we go do her numbers, her shapes, and kind of keep her in that rhythm. And for the first week, we were doing it through the iPad, which we never would give her. But she recognized quickly that when you minimize the video, you can see the preloaded videos underneath. So she taps on that, and she's like, "Oh, instant!" And then now she's like, and she
Constantly
figured
tapping.
within a few minutes, she figured out I can move this thing, and if I hit this, and if I hit this button, and then all she wanted to do. So I'd say, "Okay, Sophia, let's do our numbers," and she would go along with it. But then she would hit skip. Oh, now she recognized the skip thing. She taps it. Her little brain.
right.
Yeah. So Shaniqua had to go in and find this thing where she downloaded a disabler where it would when you're on that page, you stay on that page. So no matter what she presses, we're doing numbers. We got to
Right,
stick on that.
right.
So because if we left it there, she would never learn.
Yeah. She's just gonna keep going through videos. Yeah.
You're right. It releases, and then when the first time we did it, she was pressing.
Yeah. It's crazy how quick they learn how to use that technology.
Right.
It's amazing.
Right.
But it's something that we have to be mindful of because, it does become a part of them,
Yeah, and imagine for most of us, we were introduced to this when we were in our 20s or teens, some of us. They're being introduced at a very young age, so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know when it wasn't around.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't know a world without it.
Yeah, and it can, if you allow it to, it can become your worth. How you judge yourself worthy.
Right.
And that's the problem. Because, again, that's talking about the whole light thing. How the light shines on the poor and the oppressor. It is deceitful because it's all about how you view that light.
Right.
Is that the same scripture that says the rain falls on the just and unjust? Or is it probably a transitional thing?
That's, I don't know. But
Probably
I know that's 29,
Right.
13.
Right, I've heard that
Proverbs.
Right.
But it's also, there's another one in there that's really good. I think it's 29, 18. I can't think of it right now. But anyway. But yeah, it's about our worth. Like, how do we view ourselves?
Right.
Even colors. Like, when you don't have the passion for stuff, things are dull. You can be looking at the most beautiful thing and not recognizing the beauty of it. I was speaking to my daughter about recognizing that beauty in things and seeing how God works in things, and just saying there was a flower in front of us, and you see this flower, because she was like, how can I see God? And I'm like, he's in everything, but you got to be able to see him in everything. So if your senses become dull and you're not trying to look because you don't think there's any worth in anything, that's how you don't see him anymore. But he's actually in everything. And I'm like, so she's like, how about this flower? And I'm like, the flower, because it was a rose, right, opened up. And I'm like, you see how when it closes, you can't really see the beauty, but it opens up and you see the beauty. That's like you. If you don't open up to God, you're not going to be able to see he can't see your beauty, right? And if you close yourself off, like and I was talking like her with me, like if you close yourself off to me, we can't have that relationship. But when I speak to you and I speak to you about good things about your life and I'm not lying to you, but I really want to know who you are, then you open yourself up to me, you know, and you hug me. You literally open yourself up to me, and that's intimacy. So then you get to know who I am, you know, and that's if we become jaded, dull, the light becomes dim to us, even though it's shining. We don't see all these things that are around us that can point us in the right direction, you know, in our life. And that's sensory overload, you know, because we can't comprehend what emotions are even about. Like emotions aren't a problem. They're a problem because we don't know how to discern,
right?
You know, we don't know how to, somebody said something yesterday, emotional intellect, you know, or emotional, I think it was emotional intellect, emotional intelligence, right? And it just hit me like, wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is literally emotions and your mind connected. Experience. Because every experience you go through, it's an emotion behind it, but it's also a process in your mind. That's the difference between wisdom and understanding, or even knowledge, right? Wisdom is literally the two coming together, the heart and the mind coming together. And that's what solidifies something in our life and breaks the old kid thing where you're just letting your emotions run rampant and you're going with whatever you feel. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, literally, we go on a different path, because if we trust in wisdom, like our Father says, do this, and we believe that our Father, what he says is true, right?
Right.
So my passion, because I believe what he says is true, makes me experience that and act it out, even though it doesn't seem like it's going the way it should go. But I'm gonna experience this the way he says it because I believe it's true, right? And as I go through that creates the wisdom in me, because now what I believed in my heart starts to make sense in my head and connects the two together.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you
But
need that.
I think a lot of the problem is that so many people are dealing with trauma and programming that has completely eliminated that process.
Well, that's
You know
the
what I mean?
dimming.
Like
Yeah.
even you're talking about someone looking at their father and trusting their father. So many people don't even have that to even relate to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's what we're talking about, like being an orphan. You know what I mean? That orphan type mentality. Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to trust any, because you've been hurt so much. You've been broken into so many different pieces.
Right.
You know, but eventually you gotta, that's the thing. That's why, what is the Holy Spirit? It's a friend. Because, and it's gonna, what does God do? He continues to chase after you as a friend until you see him as a friend and no longer as an enemy. You know what I mean? And it's
But
a process.
If you don't believe in friends, you know what I mean?
Well, that's a wall.
That's what I'm saying.
But it doesn't mean that wall can't be broken.
That's true. That's
You
true.
know? Any wall can be broken through. It's just the person, like if we look at somebody and we believe that there's no touching them, then there's no touching them.
Right.
You're never going to touch them.
Right.
But if you believe that it's possible and you continue, it might take years, but eventually you'll get through. They'll open up to you.
Right.
You know, they're just afraid because of everything they've been through.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And this is kind of what back to what we were saying with the Ahmaud Arbery thing. What we're seeing is a result of not seeing the humanity in people. You know, not seeing people as humans. Where years later, the seeds that have been planted of hate and racism.
That's what I'm talking about.
These generations are still reaping that because of, you know what I mean?
So when you look at people lashing out and saying, you know, they're hunting down black people, that's because of the trauma from years of them actually doing it.
Right.
So that fear is still there.
Still there.
You know what I mean?
It's literally
cause and effect.
under the surface.
Right.
Right.
So for you to for the people that just want to dismiss it and say like, oh, stop being dramatic. You know what I mean? It's like you're dismissing what has caused this this trauma. You know what I mean?
There has to be healing. You gotta. It doesn't even matter if you never actually went through it. It's been passed down mentally through trauma. You know, person to person. Like. I mean, generation to generation.
Yeah.
You have to go. There has to be a point where somebody goes through healing.
Dude, I was over the weekend. I was forcing Liz to watch. Well, I didn't force her to. She was telling me how she never seen like Menace to Society, Black Panther, like not Black Panther, the Panther movie from the 90s.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And what was the other one we watched?
Dead Presidents. From what's the name?
Mary Van Peebles.
Yeah,
Mary Van Peebles directed that one. But the Hughes brothers, they did Menace to Society, and Dead Presidents. You know they did Menace to Society. They were 19 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were 19 years old when they did that movie,
crazy.
bro.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And Dead Presidents was 2 years later, so they were 21. You know what I mean? Like crazy.
Yeah.
And this and I was talking like, but watching those movies and showing her like what you see here, like watching Panther and then watching Menace to Society, you see the result of what was happening. Like
what was happening?
Because they show the breakdown of how the FBI came up with this. Through J. Edgar Hoover, they came up with this whole policy to dismantle the Panthers by flooding the community with drugs. And then you look at what L.A. became a menace to society, and then Dead Presidents was even connected to that. Like all these movies were connected.
See, I got to go back and rewatch that to catch that, because when I watched it, I was just entertainment.
You're caught up in this is chaos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you don't really watching them in sequence like that. Yeah. It was like, yo,
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because that's a result of what happened before.
Right. So you're watching. And it's funny because Lorenz Tate's in all these movies. So it's like
he was their guy.
He was the guy. It was like
they always got a guy.
It was him. Bokeem is in all these movies.
Yeah.
He's in all of
really?
them. Yeah. So you're watching Panther. You're watching black people trying to assert themselves from police brutality and trying to protect the community in their own way by following the laws that they just became hip to, you know, because they started studying, researching, and learning.
Because of what was happening.
Right. And then they started organizing and doing it the right way, and then they decided to dismantle them by using drugs.
The right way under the law.
The right way under the law.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but
it wasn't equated to the Klan, which they tried to make it. It wasn't.
Right,
it wasn't
right.
like that.
It wasn't. I mean, of course, there was probably factions of it that were doing
More
their
militant.
own thing, and like they showed even in the movie that the one guy who was the reporter, they took them to shoot cops for no reason. Like, you know, that wasn't because of Huey or you know, what was the other guy's name?
Bobby Seals.
Bobby Seals. Yeah, that wasn't because of them. This guy just took it upon himself to do that. You know, which of course. And then you start thinking like, well, was that due to plant? Because
could be,
the FBI did the same thing to Malcolm, where they would plant people in the organization to stir up drama, to then use the papers to demonize them. You know what I mean?
And you and I have talked about that before, and I brought that point to you. I think one of the issues I have with conservatives, especially black conservatives, is they never want to talk about. They want to stop at civil rights and the chaotic nature of the black community, but they never want to talk about what created this. And there was a time when black people did try, you know what I mean? And they would try to assimilate, they try to build their own community, and it was intentionally burned down or intentionally flooded with drugs, over policing. There is cause and effect, and you have to talk about that. That's true, because I didn't know much about the Black Panthers. You know, like I said, coming from Trinidad, I didn't know anything about it. You know, Stokely Carmichael was one of the founding, not of that chapter, but the idea of the Black Panther Party. And when I remember reading about him is when I kind of started, oh, wow. So they were doing communal things. They were actually doing lunch programs. They actually were trying. You know what I mean? And like you said, drugs were brought in.
They were brought in purposely to take the organization
And people
down.
said that. And people were saying, look, they're bringing in drugs in the community. They're flooding it with guns. And what did they call them? Conspiracy
theorists. But then you got somebody like Freeway Ricky. Who came out and told his story. This guy who was a big kingpin in L.A., and he straight up said that he was approached by a dude from the CIA that was like basically supplying him with drugs. You know what I mean? And
that's Rick Ross.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Rick Ross.
Right.
Yeah.
And we talked about not social justice the way we know it now, but there is a form of social justice that comes about because what's one of the joke Dave Chappelle made in the 80s when our community was under the crack scourge.
Right.
You said just got over it.
Just say no.
Just say no.
What's so hard about that?
You never thought that would one day affect your community.
Right.
Because when you sit back, it's like me. If I see Jake's daughter or son on the tree and I see them reaching over the limb, I know that branch is gonna crack. I know.
You know
as an
what's
adult.
funny? In the Panther movie, they actually address
Point that out?
Like
Right.
they have a conversation where he's like, they're talking to one of the major drug dealers that they're going to use,
Right.
and they're like, how can we be sure that you can control this and keep it in the community? He's like,
Right.
don't worry, it's not a problem.
Right.
But then they talk about how it didn't work.
It didn't
you know
work.
what I mean?
So for everybody listening, the concept is I know these guys for a long time. They all have children. If I see their children, like I said, on a tree, climbing a tree as kids, and I know that branch is not going to hold the weight. But to me, they're not my kids.
Right.
I don't care. And I let it happen. They fall, they break their arm. Okay? It's like...
And you watch it happen.
I
and
watch
I'm
it
like-
happen.
I'm like, why'd you let that happen? They shouldn't be climbing the tree.
Right.
What's
That's
so
my
hard
response.
about that? And then your
yes.
kid's in the tree, and I'm like, let them fall.
And now I have that
Yeah,
response.
Right.
That's the concept here. That's a small concept of what, in a sense, happened in the smaller scale
Right.
to the
Well,
drug epidemic.
I think it pointed to the separations,
Yeah.
in society, culturally,
Right.
Racially, and that's what keeps. That's not community. That's
Right.
not communal.
Right.
True community isn't going to be built off of pointing the finger.
Right.
It's going to be built off of sharing things with each other,
Mhm.
sharing your heart. That's the only way true community can be built.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, it's been it hasn't been successful because there have been other motives.
Yeah.
And even today, it's the same thing. Like there's other motives. And those motives have to be, you see the intent of people's hearts,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of people, they're lashing out. Like social justice has become, I'm hurt, hear my roar.
I'm a victim, and you need to recognize me
Right.
as a victim. Yeah.
And you see that with so like anything can become a cause. Like,
Yeah.
right. I was just watching like overweight women, like that's a cause,
Yeah, yeah.
like anything can become a cause.
Yeah,
where,
Adele's the devil right now.
Yeah.
Because she
lost weight.
Right. Yeah. What were you about to say?
I think it's dangerous now too because it's all under. So like we think we're doing so much, but the separation is greater than ever. Like the false humility kind of idea again. And like, so there was a Twitter thread that went viral, and somebody posted like, what, like white people on my timeline, what are you doing to make sure that your children don't kill mine?
Right. I saw that.
And then that was in one of the Lauren Chen videos or
Yeah.
whatever. But like, so then everybody starts commenting about all the things that they do. But like one person said, like, I have specifically put my children into an all black school and they're one of the only ones there, but I want to expose them to that and make sure that they're in that situation. And then when they come home, we talk about all these things, but it's like, even in that, ain't that racist?
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not.
That's the thing
That's
about
not diversity.
When
That's,
you look at all of these posts, when you look at people that always virtue signal like that, then it becomes all of these sects of subdivisions in the comments of, well, you're not this, so you're doing it wrong because my level of victimhood is higher than yours, so I know better.
It's
all
all
it does is
false.
continue to separate
Yeah.
even more.
Because it's not real.
Right.
Real humility brings people together.
Right.
And it's not the way you perceive humility should be.
Right.
It's literally like the person who brought that question in the first place. Okay, that's not even something that needs to be answered because you're hurting.
Right.
Right? How do you're hurting and you're in fear that you think somebody can kill your children. You need comfort.
Right.
You know, that's not something. How do you give them comfort? You know, I believe Jesus is the solution to everything, but if we really believe it, it will be. We can't, what I say is not going to comfort you.
Right.
That's why we pray for people. You know what I mean? That's the point of prayer. Prayer is powerful because you can cover somebody and keep somebody in a situation where they can't keep themselves.
Well, people have started to think that comforting me is telling me what I want to hear.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
but let me just finish this thought, because when you pray for somebody, like, I hate, somebody died, oh, my prayers are with you, like, type thing, which isn't bad, but what I'm saying is, like, you should be praying before it happens.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the point. When you see an issue, we have the ability to pray through it, and it's not about, like, it's about comforting that person. But do you really want to comfort them, or do you want to show them a piece of your mind, or do you want to lash out on them, like you were talking about earlier with the comments and everything? You know what I mean? So then, do we really want to come together with people?
Right.
Do we really want to humble ourselves? You know what I mean?
Or
Like,
do we want to show them how much smarter we are than
yeah.
them?
Or do we just want to shut up?
Right.
And
just a quick comment on Menace to Society, real quick. Your sister was like, because she's never seen,
I can't believe
that type of craziness in her life.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, you know that movie, right? Have you ever seen Menace to Society?
No.
You have to watch it at some point, but it's just like, it's a look into one of the worst situations in like LA at the time, in the 90s when drugs were crazy. But she was like, I would rather live in the dirt with chickens and outhouses my entire life than experience that. You know what I mean?
And you have to remember too, that was for us. You guys grew up here.
Yeah.
But for us, we're coming from a completely different society.
Alien.
Yeah.
We saw Detroit in the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever been to Detroit, but Detroit in the 90s was one of like a war zone. I don't know if it was bad as LA, but it was
probably similar.
It was the same element. I remember my William telling me, when we go to the mall, he's like, if anybody looks at you in your face, like staring at you, don't stare back.
Right.
Like,
because they took
that's a trigger.
Right.
What?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or don't wear. That's the first time I learned colors. Like, oh no, don't put on that red. Don't.
Yeah.
Put that blue away.
Yeah. Right.
What the hell is going on here? They hate these. I don't understand the ties to that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that we're looking at cause and effect. Those things are. It's a version. Those gangs are like a version of like the Black Panthers, but in dissension. It's almost like a deformed child of that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that was
it's the orphan, like you were talking about.
Right.
Trying to figure it out on their own.
Trying to figure it out, and they add in rules. Oh, by the way, yeah, you can have swords. Can we add an alligator pit? Sure, add that in.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's the
But we don't
mind
like,
of a child.
But we don't like black swords, only white swords.
Right. So somebody's winging it. It's like, remember when you guys said that you guys started ninja school?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you guys were just adding in
it
stuff.
was just go like
you guys were just adding in.
And then
you didn't know. You're like,
it was it was semi based off of Ninja Turtles, and then American Ninja movie, and then No Retreat, No Surrender, a little bit of Bruce Lee,
Double Dragon.
Double Dragon.
Who got the medallion?
Right.
But I think, like I said, my thing is, I've always said that. For me, it's this. It's not about. I'm way over that, like that aspect of it. But I did have to do enough research to find out how did this happen. It's all part of the sinful nature, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? Race is irrelevant to it. It's a tool, but it's all part of the sinful nature of man. You know what I mean?
You just said it. It's dissension, and it's really about like in the midst of the issue, in the midst of the end of yourself, right? When you feel like, what am I going to do? Do you descend or do you transcend? You can only transcend. That's when you're going to either fall or you're going to be risen. You know what I mean? And what is that? Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. But lead us not into temptation, right? But deliver us from evil. That's the point right there, because evil's going to come, right? But are you going to
out of that hurt, the evil will definitely come.
Yes.
You want to get them back.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I'm saying, like, when the evil comes to you, are you going to
respond the same way?
Go into temptation to go with your own desires, or are you going to deny them?
Right.
And if you don't have no hope, then you definitely going to go the other way. And that's our dissension. And then it's a continual dissension to the point where you don't know which way is up. And that's where you become like you just said it, like one generation, literally in what, like 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
One generation, they want good for their community.
Right.
Next generation don't give
It's
a
a free
shit.
for all, yeah, because they realize what's it all like. They talk about it in the movie. It's like, what's the point of all of this?
Right,
you know
right,
what I
right.
mean?
Well, it's kind of what happened to us in a sense.
Right.
More so you guys than me, because you had your dad and your mom. So you had two worlds.
Right.
So it's like this. When you guys were introduced to religion, you just followed what your mom said. Then your dad started giving you a different perspective. Your dad brought in sort of a philosophy type, you know what I mean? He was able to tie things.
It's deeper than just the normal church thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But for your mom, she didn't go as deep as you guys.
Right.
So throughout that, you guys started learning. So by the time you guys got to the age of organized church, a lot of what you were learning from your dad and your mom didn't match up. Then you guys started to formulate your own opinion, especially when he decided to go the opposite way in terms of party, right? And if your dad was alive, I'm sure you and him, maybe he'd have changed now, but I'm sure you and him would have gotten into some arguments about.
They did.
We did.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the point, right? The point is this. You were taught certain things, which is the civil rights, peace, give us a chance.
Right.
That, okay, all right. The 80s come, crack. The generation above them were telling them, just follow these rules and you'll be okay. Crack comes, chaos. Right? And now they're like, you know what? The 90s, F that, we're gonna do this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Get
And it's the
this
same
money.
thing was happening to us with church. We grew up in the era of televangelism.
Right, right.
Come into your town, so and so. And we believe that. Healing and miracles, all that stuff. Like, and all of a sudden we're like, that ain't real. Then we start getting into studying certain things, conspiracy theories, timelines on what happened.
And then that's why you also see a lot of people getting into New Age stuff and Eastern
Right.
mysticism.
Yeah, we could have easily gone down that road. We
Right.
could have been that kid who's like, no, red, blue.
Right.
But we did it in the religious sense where we were like bucking against a system of organized, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were doing
Could
that.
be wearing all white, being like, I stand on my head for 8 hours.
No, what I mean is that, I feel like that was
I know
our,
exactly
you know what I mean?
what you're saying, yeah.
I think we all do it in a sense.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Where it's like, look
But
what's happening right
I
now.
think
In
the
a sense,
key-
it's rebellion, but
It's a
in
rebellion.
a sense, it's trying to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
You go.
You go.
In a sense, it's trying to transcend the indoctrination that you see happening, and you know what I mean.
Because the rebellion is rebelling against what you see.
Right.
Like we're rebellion. The earth groans in manifestation for the whole earth. Why does the earth quake? Because it's rebelling against what is being seen. Because deep down inside of us, we want to see the truth that we were created by. Right? Now, it takes, like, and I know I've said this before, but like, we're seeking, we begin to seek. Not everybody. Some people rebel and they just give up on life. So then they're like those people in the gang that like, I don't care.
Right.
Because they're truly rebelling. But you can rebel against what you see to seek after the truth. You might not even know what that is, but you start seeking after that.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, for us, like, that's what I saw. Like, we started selling CDs, and then, like,
Breaking the
these
law.
these principles
Right.
that we're doing, these are actually working.
Right.
And we already had a
Right.
understanding of the Bible. And then not only that, but the music that was coming out of it, like, all the stuff. That all leads to it. And then it's like, it just brings back to that John 4, where it talks about, like, the woman at the well, where he's like, you worship a God you don't know, but salvation is of the Jews. Why? Because they held on to that thing. Even though it was corrupt, they still held on to it. That's the thing you got to honor, and that's the thing we have to honor, because rebellion wants you to rebel against everything, even though it's like, honor your mother and your father.
Right.
You see all the corruption in your mother and your father, so you want to throw
hypocrisy, yeah.
Right. So you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you can't. Just at nobody's, like, that's the movies.
And that's how I feel like when I kind of see like people who are like directly in my generation that I've come up with, like, F America, and this is the worst, and you know what I'm saying? And then I have like my girlfriend who's an immigrant, right? And she has like an American flag tattooed on her.
Right.
And she's
'Cause
like,
she's from Venezuela,
she's
right?
from Venezuela.
Yeah.
She's like, thank you. Thank you that I am here.
right.
Thank
It's
you for my
perspective,
friends.
yeah.
Thank you
Right,
for my family, you know.
What was that dude? I said you and him need to team up. The Trinidadian guy. I sent James a video of this Trinidadian guy.
the cooking guy?
No, the Trinidadian guy who was talking
the
about
proud American.
who was out there protesting the quarantine. He was like, I need to work. He was like going on about, but he was just saying like he comes from Trinidad. He said it's overrun by Venezuelans because they see what socialism did there. You know what I mean?
And she schooled me. Like when I remember having a conversation, like at Silk City Diner, we met up and I was like 18 years old, you know, and I was a little bit more in that world and mental space and said some of those things kind of like there's so much wrong, blah, 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 right? And she was just like, she checked me. She was like,
you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Like,
you
no,
ain't been nowhere.
That's not how I feel.
Right.
And that totally shifted my perspective on things because that was somebody I knew and trusted who was like my exact age, had been here for a long time. She could have easily kind of fallen into that entitled, you know what I'm saying, mentality as well. But no, she was like, that's not what it is. We need to be grateful for what we have here. You cannot criticize everything when you have no solution. Where does that get us? That only continues in misery, breeds misery over and over again.
And that's that fear that brings you to, you know, the beginning of fear, or the beginning of wisdom is fear, fear of the Lord. And if we just, again, we throw everything out, and you see that everybody, all these youngins that want socialism, like you can't just throw away all of what we stood for.
Right.
Why do you think we stood this long in America? Because of what we were founded on, you know, and a lot of people want to just throw it all away. Bernie Sanders, like, you don't understand. This dude has no backing, you know, and everything he is backed on monetarily has to do with capitalism, you know, so he really has no backing in anything he says. But if you want to rebel, and that's another thing, like eventually you're gonna be humbled,
right?
You know, like,
well, it's also the rich kid syndrome, right? Because when you grow up a rich kid, you kind of don't understand what it takes to become successful like your parents did, and you kind of take it for granted, and then you start picking apart everything that you see that you don't like, and then you start wanting to rebel against it, and then you just want to throw it all away and go do your own thing. But like you said, you're going to be humbled, you know what I mean? And then you're going to either come back and fall in line, or you're going to turn to drugs or something.
I was talking to my daughter about this, and we were talking about the house, and I'm like, because I was talking about rebellion, and she was like, what's rebellion? And I'm like, if you say you don't want to listen to me, and you say, oh, I'm going outside and I'm going to do my own thing, and what happens? You don't got no food.
Right.
If it rains, you're stuck in the rain. You have no shelter. You know, think about all the things that you have here, and if you turn your back on us, you don't have anymore.
You're not safe. You can be kidnapped, you know what I mean? Like, all of your security is gone.
Right. And that's wisdom. You know, if we might not know it, but if we fear that and trust that beginning thing, like maybe there's something to this. What is the something?
Right.
You know, what is the solution?
Yeah, and to touch on, elaborate a little bit, my take on it is, I feel like what we're witnessing is, like I said, a form of cause and effect. The people from that generations, the people who produce these people who are social justice, fight, we hate this place. The language in that house was probably close to, don't worry about anybody, worry about yourself. Here's your dance class. Here's your violin class. Here's your tutor. You're going to go to Harvard. They spoke a certain way. They more than likely probably did.
Right.
And when those kids started to grow up, they wanted to distance themselves from that. So their idea of it was, I'm not going to go to school. I'm not going to get the white picket fence. How many people are moving out of the suburbs now? So the idea was like, you know what? I want the socialist world.
Right.
I want to go travel to Bali and smoke weed on the beach. I don't want to be a corporate dude. I don't want to be like you, Dad.
Right.
So they responded. And I think it's a lot of times it's because parents are trying to create this utopia for their kids. They can't control it. We saw an example of that with the college administration scandals. Even though they have all this money, they can take $500,000 and say, you know what? Go start a business.
Right.
They said, here's that piece of paper is more important.
Right.
So So the kid's heart is never in it. The passion is not there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a result. So,
100%
so that generation, we can't just blame those kids and be like, look at these idiots out here
Right.
protesting. They are a result of a form of control that the parents set and was like, you're going to get this job, you're going to have your white picket fence, you're going to baseball teams and violin class and that class, because you got to look good to the neighbors and the public.
And the same thing stands for those that fall away from their religious upbringing, like once they go away to college, because they're met with a system that's going to constantly ridicule them for what they believe in
and try and rip them away from what they built.
But if it's not grounded in anything real, it's going to be easily taken. It's going to be,
you have vain philosophies.
You don't want it. You don't really want it.
Right.
You don't want, like, religion is literally like trying to live up to something that you don't have. You know what I mean? You're trying to live up to something that you don't really possess. That's what religion is. So now you're trying to, because it's always eluding.
Right.
That's literally the world. Like,
and evolving too, because next year that very religion might add a new thing to it.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, so we're dancing now? Wait, so we're wearing pants now? So wait, we can wear lipstick now? Because it's always, because I remember when we were introduced to a form in Pentecostal in Trinidad where we were from. My sisters, all of a sudden it was no pants, no lipstick, no hair, this. And it was a version of it. Then a new pastor coming in, there's his version of it. And it's another version, and it's another version. So we're like, I can keep up. You know what I mean? And it causes confusion.
That's the point.
Right.
Keep them confused. Like, Catholics couldn't even read the Bible back in the day. Why? To keep them confused.
Right.
You always got to be reaching for this unattainable thing.
We see it now because there was a time when hip hop wasn't welcome in the church. Now they're like, how many of y'all believe that we got to reach these kids with hip hop?
Yeah.
Me or whatever it is. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's like, wait, is that 50 Cent on stage? You know what I mean? Or is that Eric Banner with Mary Mary? And then you're forced to be like, well, come on, James, you can't be old. They tell you that. They say you can't be thinking old.
That's old man, James.
That's old man. Come on,
old
man. You can't be, so you're like, wait. All right. 50, sandwiches. 2 a.m. All right. Only he got that one.
Yeah, I know. Because Dave Chappelle.
I rehearsed these jokes, you know.
Quick side note again about my experience with all these black movies. First of all, I just want to point out that black movies in the 90s were so much better than they are now.
Of course.
Like, what happened to black movies?
Yeah.
Like, because I've had this
they
conversation.
actually had something to say.
That's what I'm saying.
And it was not
but
very
they were
biased.
They were well done, well produced. Like,
Script,
me watching that and then realizing that them dudes were 19 years old when they made that movie.
Right.
Like, I'm like, what are we doing?
You know why? Because I think it was more about telling the story.
Right.
Instead of trying to, like, tell the story from a very biased perspective.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And you have to add in that there was an element of where corporate interest and greed didn't care about the artistic impression of hip hop or whatever it is. So they were like, oh, fine, make a movie, whatever.
Right.
Until they realized people
Let them have it.
Yeah, people responded to it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So now they're like, we need to get on top of this.
We need to get on top of it. It's the same thing with the music industry.
Yeah.
If your message is too positive.
Right.
What's that?
I was going to say, so then they make something like Soul Plane.
Yeah. Soul Plane.
Because
Tyler Perry movies.
Because they realize that, listen, once you're being educated in this form,
Right.
because they never considered it. Let's be honest. The men that control the record labels, they never thought that you could learn anything from this. There's nothing. Like we said, like as much as we make fun of the blaxploitation movies, at their core, as crappy as they were, they had
a message.
The
message was we don't want drugs in our community.
Right.
Cops are
bad.
beating us up.
Right. Watch out for the white detectives that are going to play detectives. O'Grady, remember from Black Dynamite?
And they're against drug dealers. They're against like
pimps and hustlers.
Yeah,
they glorified it to a point.
They glorified it to a certain point, but yeah.
But there was a crappy message. There was a message in the filth. You know what I mean?
But I also wanted to point out that your sister decided that as a part of this culture experience, she was going to make me watch some white movies that I never seen.
Fried green tomatoes, here you come.
So we watched The English Patient. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's the longest piece of crap I've ever seen. It's just like it's one of these movies that won all these Oscars in the 90s. Bro, I was like, oh, is it ever gonna end?
Right,
Like it
right,
was
right,
just.
right.
What's it about?
It's about this dude in World War II who, he
White movie.
he was a soldier, but he falls in love with this woman who's married to another guy.
Yeah.
And then she ends up. It's
I
too
don't
much.
know.
It's too much.
It's not on the quiz.
But she was like,
But do you understand? That's culture.
yeah,
That is total culture.
right.
You know what I mean? And it proves something. It has nothing to do with the idea of race. It has everything to do with your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It has everything to do with your environment. If you're raised in a certain environment, you could be as black or as white or as Asian or whatever it is. It has everything to do with your culture and what you assimilate to based on what you're given. I've always said this, right? The concept of race is very simple to explain, and said when it wasn't about race in those ancient times. It was about the language. If you spoke the language, you were able
Right.
to communicate.
Right.
It's like this. I've said this to a guy before. I said, "You're German, right?" He said, "Yeah, I'm German." "Can you speak German?" "No." If you and I were on a plane and the plane crashed and we landed in Germany, the thing that you're so proud of, your German heritage, is going to do us no good.
Right.
Because you can't speak the language.
Not only that, he's gonna identify more with you.
Yes, you have more
than
in common
any of
with
those
me.
Germans.
You have more
Not
in-
only that, they're not accepting you.
Yeah, right,
You know what
right,
I'm saying?
right. You're not German over there.
Yeah, you and me are more brothers than you and any of these German people. You're so proud of the German thing. I was like, it's the language.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? My mom, we were talking about this the other day because, she's her grandfather.
It's from Italy.
That's from Puerto Rico. No, I'm saying.
the one from Puerto Rico.
Yeah, he was actually from Spain and then he moved to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Right? So I was like, wow, so you're more European
Yeah.
than you are even Puerto Rican, but yet
That's clear.
But but yet culturally, you're Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Because, or maybe even New Yorican, whatever.
Right. That's a thing.
Because
That's a thing,
yeah,
bro.
New
yeah.
York Rican?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's a different feel.
Right.
You ever watch
But-
West Side Story?
No, I haven't.
You never seen West
No, I
Side
haven't seen
Story? I want
But
to
I do
be
know what
in
you're saying.
America. You never seen? Yo, you gotta watch West Side Story,
All right.
yo.
Watch that tonight. Like,
Yeah, I watched that with Leslie. She was like, yeah.
You're right.
It brought back memories.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just funny because like, wow, so you're more European, but yet you're culturally Puerto Rican.
Right.
Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
And what you identify with. I think that's important. I think because our forms of education are very limited and it's very controlled. So, like I said, people don't understand the concept of race was really invented in the 1600s.
Right.
It was really the language. You know what I mean?
But that's the thing that separates us. Because it's more cultural than even language. I mean, of course, language is going to separate us because we can't communicate. But what I'm saying is that it's all about
Because all of this Latin countries speak Spanish, but they have different cultures.
right.
And
Just
they
like-
hate each other profoundly.
Yeah, just like the islands, though,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Yeah.
But it's all about the culture,
Bro, we were just talking about your dad's friend Ramdiel, who is Indian, and he has a certain view. You know what I mean? But he doesn't really recognize that Indians from India
Won't accept him.
Won't accept him as
I
Indian.
did talk to him about that. He succeeded.
He
said,
is-
all right,
he
you got me on
admitted-
that. You know what I mean? He said, all right.
Yeah, because he
But-
was like trying to say that people should stick to their own race, and it's like that's such a flawed concept. You know what I mean?
Well, his question to me was, how do you feel as most people see me and they see a black guy,
Right.
but very little people know my background, which is half Indian.
That's why I pointed out. All
half-
the time.
No one pays attention. They think you're just joking.
the Spanish laugh.
So they don't see it because in this country, the idea of interracial means black and white.
Yep.
So and the other part of it too is Americans are very arrogant. So they're like, who cares?
Right.
Don't explain
You're
that
black.
to us.
Right.
So the idea here. So he asked me. He said, "Hey, I want to ask you a question." He said, "Now he's
who is this? Sorry,
Ramdale is a fellow Trinidadian.
Okay.
We're all living in. He lives in New York and we live down here.
Okay.
But he knows my parents from way back in the day.
Him and
But he's
Ramdiel and his dad get on the phone and debate about the Bible for 8 hours at a
Okay,
time.
so longtime family
Longtime
friend
family
in the
friend,
mix.
yeah.
Okay.
But he is of East Indian descent. Okay. And my dad is black, indigenous people, and some Spanish. That's where the than
Garcia.
the Garcia King. But of all the mixing and stuff like that. So it's not just pure African. There's other things in there. But his idea was, how do you feel about the idea of interracial? And don't you feel your life was harder as an interracial person? And I know that's a setup question.
Yeah.
Everybody, I've heard that from white people so much.
Don't you feel
right?
Because
Penny did that to me.
And not only that, not to cut you off, but white people tout that. White people tout that as the reason.
She did air quotes.
The reason. Part of the
you know what I'm
deterrent,
saying?
yeah.
They're like, oh, everything's going to be harder. Everything's
Yeah,
going to be
right,
harder.
right,
So it's interesting to me that you're like, even he's like, don't
Yes.
you feel that it was hard? Like,
yes.
Because what they're playing on is you're in that moment you get to choose to be a victim and say yes. I had a terror.
right.
You get to do the Mariah Carey.
I'll leave
thing.
your daughter alone.
except for Jamie, who's like, no.
Right. But that's usually proposed to the men, because the idea is, don't you get why I don't want you around my daughter?
Right.
Don't you understand? Would you want your kids to go through this? So I said no. I said, actually, I think the opposite. I think being first of all, I explained this before on my first time on the podcast. I never knew my mom was Indian and my dad was black, because that's mom and dad.
Right.
Until someone tells you that, you don't know. So if I'm born to an Indian woman, a white woman, a black woman, it's until society points that out to me, then I recognize that.
Well, that's one difference about growing up here.
Right.
Is that, especially having a black father,
right,
he makes it a point to let you know,
right.
because he knows what you're going to face.
Right.
So he has to prepare you for it.
Yes.
So my dad used to tell us from the time I could understand, you're half black,
because
you're
I'm
half
black, y'all,
Spanish,
and I'm black, y'all,
and I'm black, and I'm black, and I'm black, y'all. That's from CB4. I don't know these black movies. Come on, Jake.
I haven't seen that movie since the 90s.
You were watching La Bamba. He was watching La Bamba.
That was our movie.
CB4.
You don't remember the one member of the group? He started going on the militant black rap movie.
Dude, I haven't seen. All I know is Chris Rock was in it.
But his song was "I'm Black,"
right.
and that was the hook. I'm black,
okay.
y'all, and I'm black,
So
y'all,
it's a joke.
and I'm black, and I'm black, and I'm black. Yeah.
So you're black.
Yeah, right. But basically, that's all he has to say. He's black. But anyway, so growing up in this country and being mixed, and I remember the first time being called a nigger. I was 5 years old. You know what I mean? By a little white boy.
Yeah.
You know who. You know, looking back, it was like, how dare you? Anyway, but continue.
No, so he had asked me that, but I know I'm well versed in this now because I've been doing this for a few years, so I kind of understand what he was doing. Like I said, you're right. They're trying to bait you into sympathy. They realize that telling you don't do that is not going to work. So they realize, like, how can I bait him into some form of sympathy and understanding that this is for your greater good? That's really what they're trying to do. So they're trying to play on your emotions. So I said, no, I think it's the opposite. I think it built my character, because I remember when we moved to predominantly black neighborhoods, the black kids picked on us, you know, and so I had perspective on that. But then I heard my uncles on my Indian side making black jokes. So they weren't innocent. You know what I mean? So I was able to stand in this weird position and be like, wait, you guys are racist.
Right.
And you guys are racist. And you guys keep telling me about them. But I have insight that both of y'all are like this. You know what I mean?
It gives you a neutral perspective.
It gives me a neutral perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's the unique thing if you're interracial. If you really slow down a bit, realize how silly both sides are. You know what I mean? What happened?
That? I'm hearing someone's phone.
No, it's not mine. So how silly both sides are. I think you're really able to take it in and really slow it down and be like, you both are so silly.
Yeah.
So as he was telling me this, I said, no, that's the opposite. I got strength from that. I recognized that it wasn't my mom and dad who were crazy for this. I come from a loving home.
Right.
My dad was loving. I have a father in my life. My mother was loving until my mom passed away. But, you know, I come from a good environment. I didn't come from a chaotic place.
Right.
What you're trying to explain to me does not exist for me. So I'm not going to take what your perception of reality is and make that man like, yeah, it was terrible. No, it wasn't. I come from a good place.
Right.
But what they're really saying to you is, James, it's okay for me to think the way that I think and stay where I am.
And also stay away from my daughter.
Yeah, right.
I don't trust you. So that's kind of what it was. And I was like, no. So we challenged each other and I said, here's what it is. I've had insight
Right.
on how Indians talk about blacks, and I've had insight on how blacks talk about Indian. So when I became a man and I started really reasoning things out and really searching my feelings, because there was hurt,
Right.
there was hurt, and I had to deal with that and learn to forgive them and learn to really look at it for what it is. I saw it as they're basically just passing on bad information throughout the years. It's just terrible information, and they're sticking in it. It's like
The food pyramid.
yes, it's just bad.
Right.
It's just bad information. I remember dealing with a white guy I used to work with. He was an
And
employee.
I say that because you base the rest of your life off of that, and
Right.
then like that becomes a problem.
Right. The concept I use is I was working with this white guy a long time ago, and for some reason the concept of interracial dating came, or interracial dating or race or whatever came up, and the first thing he was talking about in code language why black people are lazy and stuff like that. Now I let him go with it. I let him go with it.
He was white explaining to you.
I let him.
He was Jesse Lee Peterson.
He was Jesse Lee. So I let him go with it because
that blacks are lazy.
he didn't say it quite like that, but he was pointing it out.
Yeah.
But he kept on using, so the way how he was doing it was a kind of like, my grandfather came, he worked hard, he couldn't read, he couldn't write. It was almost like these insurmountable odds my
Right.
grandfather was able to overcome. So your people have no excuse.
Right.
Right? And he kept on doing that or whatever. And when he started to try to explain to me why society is the way, I said, wait a minute. Your grandfather couldn't read or write, and that's the person you're taking the information from? You know what I mean? And I just left him with that. You know, just to let him know, like, that's not a good source.
Right.
You know what I mean? What you're trying to tell me to impress me is not impressive.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think sometimes if you don't get emotional and you just, people toss you a hot potato, just toss it right back to
Right.
them. But don't do it in a nasty way. A lot of times people are like, yeah, that's right. Dang, my dad, he really couldn't. That's not a good source of information. You know, the guy you're quoting is not a good source.
Right.
You
Your
know what I
dad
mean?
is the one that passed you down all this knowledge about society, and he was illiterate.
Right. Okay. Sure. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's still some honor in him not being able to read and write and working hard, but what does that got to do with this?
Right,
You know?
right.
No, and I get that, but that's not what he was using it for.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean? So he there was a bit of truth, but he's weaponizing it, and that's what it is. So you have to realize when people are trying to weaponize certain things, those things are true. And with Ramdiel, same thing. I love him. He's a
Yeah.
good guy. He doesn't mean it in that sense.
Yeah.
But as he was telling me about it, I knew where it came from. It came from a bad source. You know what I mean? Indians were operating this way because they felt blacks were doing this to them, and blacks were doing that back to them because they felt Indians were doing this to them.
So it's both reactionary behavior.
Yeah.
You know. And then on top of that, maybe there's experience where, you know, Indian girl does choose a black guy that treats her like shit, but it's not because he's black. It's because she chose an idiot.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and she and then whose job was it to raise her up to know who to pick better? You know
And
what
that's
I'm
the
saying?
part that's hard because then you got to take a mirror and be like, it was me.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So it's
Well,
like
that's just, you know, muddy water.
Right.
Yep.
It's then you need a cleansing.
Right. And you know, like I said, it's a sensitive subject. It definitely is. It is a sensitive subject because they made it into that. But I think if we remove emotion and able to talk, I think we'll get to the bottom of it.
I mean, emotion is a good thing because it reveals the places that need to be heard. Like, I know talking to people have a wall up. You got to get past that wall. And sometimes even it's not about like get past the wall where we just love each other. No, I'm talking about you got to find the opening to where they lash out sometimes because that's the point of connection. Because then you can take that feeling and you can really talk to somebody about it. Like, so what's going on there?
So you're saying, hey, man, you're punching me. You're emotional right now. Cut it out.
yeah. So what do you do with someone that just like gets emotional off the bat? Like anything that you pose to them that is
Well, that's what you mean, James. Like, right, when you try, like when you see people having a everyone just gets emotional, and when you're emotional and then I'm emotional and everyone's like defending their point,
Right.
it just becomes this
You
battle
can't do anything. Yeah.
instead of like a
Yeah.
solution finding
Yeah.
kind
I've
of
really
conversation.
learned how to I've not mastered it yet, and it'll be a long time. But I've learned how to really put this in perspective with marriage, because Shaniqua is the first time I've lived
That's a
with a
great
woman.
example.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I've lived with a woman. I can't have my way.
You're right.
She can't have a way. But we have to use logic, and we have to. And honestly, I'm telling you, if because Shaniqua's had to come down, and I've had to come down,
Mm-hmm.
and there are times when I'm going up, I'm like, oh, I could be going too far, because I see the end, and I want to press the gas. But
Yeah.
if I do, I'm gonna lose her.
Mhm.
You know. So I'm like, let me come back.
Calm down a little bit. Yeah.
Right. And I think if we think of, I'm not saying love everybody like your wife,
Right.
but I think if we step into it with love and we say, even if this gets out of control, this is the end goal.
Right.
You know, because her and I have had some wars verbally, but when we're done, I'm like, where did that get us?
Right.
We're trying to.
It just becomes who's going to be right at the end of this.
Who's going to be right at the end of this?
Yeah, but it's not about like, why are you lashing out?
Right.
Because even that, like the whole lashing out thing, has to do with what they're feeling. And then you can connect to that. My biggest breakthroughs, like with my relationship with Leslie, is always
After a big lashing out.
no. Sometimes it's not. Like actually, we just had one where it was like nothing really that bad that was happened, but it was just an acknowledgement of something, and like, how can we work this out? And sometimes it's like, in my perspective, it has to do with it goes beyond logic. You know, it goes beyond logic, and those are where you have the biggest breakthroughs of love, because it's about communion. It's really like when you think about, and you got to bring this back to God, because Jesus pouring out the wine, like drink of this wine, is literally saying drink of my blood, right? But it's his life experience poured out into somebody else. And we're doing that with others.
Right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes we have to recognize what they're seeing and what we don't see.
Right.
You know, and even what God is saying through them.
Right.
And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when you recognize that, like I just had experience where like, and this is supernatural, but I had an experience where it was like me and her were talking, and it was like literally like we both recognized something happened that you can't explain, that brought you back to like almost like a first love experience, you know, but even greater. Like and something that was in the way became out of the way.
Right.
And to me that's like trusting in God, you know, to even like, okay, how sometimes it goes beyond our perspective of like, how do we fix this type thing? You know what I mean? And it like, I know for me, it was like in the middle of me, like talking to her, and I recognized how I was neglecting her in a way that I couldn't see. You know what I mean? But only I could see through his eyes, you know, but it was only through her laying down her own agenda too that I was able to see it, which is kind of hard to explain.
Right.
You know
No,
what I mean?
I get it.
But it's like you both have to be. You can see it in somebody's eyes when they're like, they're already judging you. You know what I mean? You can just look at somebody and say, "You're judging me, and you're just waiting for me to shut up."
And you're loading up.
You know
You're
what I mean?
loading up because you're trying to gauge them.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking like you said, like you're putting down yours, I'm putting down mine. Let's go down. You're like, but I'm gonna keep one just in case.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
But when you like really
Ammo.
like, when you really like lay it down,
Right.
you know, and just open up, even if it's through talking.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know for y'all, but like sometimes when you talk through things, you start to realize, you start
I
to
do it
have
all the time.
revelation on stuff.
Listen, I talk to myself when I'm driving. I brainstorm like what I'm gonna say, how I'm gonna say it, with everything.
And then you realize,
I'm like, change that.
Yeah. But you start to really realize, like, oh wow, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I didn't see that.
And even sometimes when I'm preparing to attack, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Like, because I think sometimes you need to run the play. You need to run the plays because you're preparing yourself to attack, and you're like, what am I? I'm planning an assault. You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to get out of this? You know what I mean?
But like those, to me, those are the experiences that are so real that doesn't matter what happened. Nobody can take that away.
Right.
Nobody. What you just experienced,
Right.
it goes it solidifies something in your life.
Right.
You know? And that's the bonds that can't be broken, and that's like true intimacy.
Yeah.
And we can have that. It doesn't have to be with our wives. It can be with relationships with people. But are you willing to go beyond like the harshness of somebody initially?
I want to add to that. That's a thing that you're going to have to go through. The pastor, the professor, the counselor they can tell you, but you have to go through it, and you have to go through the motions to know, because I don't know what that is. I don't know what your wife. You tell me, James. I can't gauge if I'm a young guy and you're telling me what to do. I don't know. I've never lived with a woman. I can't gauge that until I go through it. And I'm like, all right, Jake did tell me about this. Let me work out these muscles, because these are things I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
you got to go through the experience. There's no other way. That's like literally what I'm saying when I like communion and like wisdom.
You have to go through it.
You have to go through it. It's the experience through love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like experience, and the love is the hope, and the hope is the faith. As you move in that, you literally solidify something in your life. Like, and that's so powerful.
Yeah.
That breaks the bonds of like people who.
Yeah.
It puts people back together.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's where all of this, like, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay. That's why I'm saying this expert thing. We got to put that out of the window, because it's a good idea to have information, but certain things come by practice.
Right.
That is what it is.
Well, that's true.
You know,
that's true expertise.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like true expertise.
No, I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying that we have to be careful.
He's saying true expertise is in practice.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know
and what I'm saying is that the false experts are like, I think I said this a couple weeks ago, like the false prophets, the false experts are the ones that have been running their mouth and everybody's been listening to, but they don't know what they're talking about.
Be in a perfect marriage. Have you been married?
Yeah. Right.
No, but I have a PhD.
Right.
Yo,
right.
it
Steve
reminds me-
Harvey's book on relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember what we were talking about the other day with the 90 Day Fiance?
Yeah.
I finally looked up Ed.
I'm so done with that show.
I couldn't get past
I
Ed.
keep watching it, but I'm like, I've had it on in the background, like while I'm cleaning, and I'm just cleaning, like yelling at the phone.
Right. Ed got dumped.
Right. Ed got dumped?
Yeah, he got dumped.
But the guy from Australia, that's who I'm.
Yeah, I forget his name.
Yeah, because
the relationship
expert, right? So this guy's talking about
his relationship is
how to be in a relationship, right? So he's explaining to these women, because it was all women in this seminar, right? How to be, and they're like picking him apart.
Yeah,
and he doesn't know how to combat it, to the point where he leaves. He's just stuck. Like, I'm sorry, I got to get my thoughts together. Okay, I think I gotta take some time. He walked out, like,
and his girlfriend was there watching it, and
she
then
was
she
embarrassed.
was like coming at him after that, like, do you really believe what you were just saying?
Right. Yeah.
And he's trying to be an expert because he read a book.
Yeah.
You know, and think about that. People give us degrees.
But isn't that what college is?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They give you a degree based off of you reading some books and taking some tests.
Right.
And following what the professor tells you.
Right.
This is what I'm professing.
And then you have this false sense of being the teenager who knows everything, who has everything figured out.
Educated.
At 22, you're walking
educated.
into the world like everyone else is beneath me because
Right.
I have the degree, like,
Right.
and you don't even know what you have yet to learn.
Yeah.
Like, that's real dangerous,
Yeah.
in my
Right. You know what
opinion,
I
to
mean?
send those people as the skilled ones who are going to be on the news and all the positions of making money.
Right.
That's like not good. That's not
Yeah.
a good state for
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the medical industry. Like a physician, do you really know the physical body in the way it is supposed to work? No, you know what they told you about it to treat it in the way they told you to do it.
Right.
You don't really know how it works.
Right.
You know, because we're still learning. Actually, you know.
Right.
Or you haven't considered at least all aspects. You know, like you said, you're considering what that university told you.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
And you don't even have to, because they're not even telling you like there could be more to this. A lot of times they're just, all right, this is, and you're like, I got to be successful. How do I be successful? Do this, do that. I'm good. That's that utopia, Arcadia mentality, false Eden, that we move through in our life and just keep going. And then when you get there, you're like, this is all it is.
Right.
So then you become jaded.
Right.
I need something to satisfy me. Right. Oh, you're going to pay me to do? Okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You descend.
Right.
Sure, I'll make your butt bigger.
I think another part of it too, from a male perspective, is men. Honestly, men don't talk like this.
Yeah.
Men don't share with other men the trappings or the pitfalls, I should say, in gearing yourself up for trying to destroy somebody. That somebody being your wife, and not realizing that you're setting up yourself for a chaotic life. You know what I mean? How to talk to your wife, how to love your wife. We don't hear guys really talking about it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's either one way or the other. You're totally submissive to your wife, or
yes,
you're trying
or
to
you have the iron fist. They say.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right. Am I gonna beat her? I'm gonna cry. I don't know.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. I think we have to change that perspective. And the truth is, it's really based on what we teach our kids, like teaching your daughter to submit to her husband, the right one. She has to submit to the right guy. Your sons to love their wives. You know what I mean? And if we really
become an example, like it's not. We don't have to say much when they see it in front of our eyes. Like we don't got to be perfect,
right?
Yeah, that's true.
We just gotta keep trying. That's the point. Like, I mess up, but I'm not going to quit.
Right.
I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
Because I believe in my wife.
Right.
I believe, and I have hope in her, and that's the thing that brings us together. And my kids see that, and they're going to have hope too.
Right.
If we're trying to hide it behind closed doors, no.
which is a part of what I see. Because the idea is to maintain a sense of perfection,
right?
Yeah.
And that's not truth.
I mean, men like not being so stoic, feeling like they have to be something, portray this pride. That's all a lie. We don't have to, like you were saying.
Yeah.
We got to be able to talk about these things.
Right. Which that same attitude right there, if it's not dealt with, translate to womanizing. My manhood means conquest. Look at all the ladies.
Right.
Look at my Eldorado. Look at the Corvette. Because
Look
that
how I
energy
got
is
'em in check.
You can't control it. It has to blossom somehow. So it's gonna manifest in the look at all the her. Look at that.
Right.
Look at my cars. Look at my shoes. Look at my Jordan collection. It'll translate to something.
Look
It'll
at
manifest.
what's happening. You got men who emotions are way too under control, and you have women whose emotions are way too out of control.
Right.
That's the manifestation of the bullshit in a way, because men have to deal with their emotions, and women have to learn how to deal with their emotions, but in different ways. And we don't know how to do that when we feel like we gotta be a certain way because an image has been portrayed that we have to be.
Right.
Or challenging that. I think that's one area I got to give my dad credit in. That area is masculinity never came from machoism.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was foreign to me. So when I saw it happening or whatever, I was attracted to it because peacocking gets you girls,
right?
But it didn't. It wasn't. I'm not familiar with it. I can't ever say I saw him.
It wasn't something that came natural to emulate.
Yeah, it didn't come
so
natural.
It's funny how
it felt
like
unnatural.
Something like even the word peacock, and I'm just saying this because I was researching peacock for like 5 hours yesterday, right, in terms of the Bible.
Right.
But it's just funny how something becomes totally opposite,
right?
Because a peacock literally represents like cherubim before the throne of God, right?
It's also a prideful. It's described as a prideful creature.
That's what I'm saying. When it's really the total opposite. It's about being humbled. You know what I mean? It's about being cleansed. All the colors of it, the eyes all over. On the. It's this total opposite thing, and it's just.
Well, we see it in the natures. The way they describe it is that it's just about procreation.
Yeah,
the bird is displaying that because in the bird world, the males are always more prettier, so they're on display to spread their genetics.
Right.
Yeah, which.
No, I was just going to say, but it's also been hijacked by the whole Illuminati thing.
Yeah. It has.
Because of the eyes.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm saying is that when you read the Bible, the cherubim had eyes all over them. That's the 4 living creatures before the throne.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a point to that. Why do they say holy, holy, holy 3 times? It's about rebalancing yourself. You know what I mean? Like, but we never look into these things because we have preconceived notions. We look at things as just science, but it's all creation.
Right.
You know, why were these things created? What is the intent behind it?
Right.
Like, look at Job. The whole thing with Job was like trying to do things based off of control, right? And then realizing he didn't have all his bases down, right?
You never can.
You never can.
Right.
And then realizing I have to trust in him. And that's how he got restored.
Right.
You know, we gotta try.
But he was trying to live he was trying to live by control because of fear.
Right.
You know what I mean? The fear of things going wrong. You know what I mean?
And in a sense, this is race, politics, religion.
Right.
It's the fear, and number one, you're paying too much attention to the propaganda, the machine, which is the beast.
Right.
That's what it is. So if you pay attention to that, you're going to live in fear.
So that's what people do. They're in fear of being hurt. They're in fear of failing. They're in fear of being attacked. So they try to control every aspect of everything that's going on. If I'm in a relationship, I got to be in control of that, because then that keeps me from getting hurt if I'm in control. You know what I mean? If I have a job, I got to be in control of that, because that keeps me from being insecure. You know what I mean?
I don't want to be that person that loses their job.
Right.
Because then everybody
looks at you.
Yeah,
You're a failure.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to be that person that has a bunch of relationships that don't work, or so I'm not going to do any. You know what I mean? Like, however you, whatever your coping mechanism is, you know, your survival technique, tactic, I should say.
Right.
You know?
And we got to be. The thing is, man, what's hard, or not hard, but it's difficult when you're younger, is this desire to want to be a part of a group outweighs, you know, logic in terms of your biblical sense, training that muscle, right? Like I was telling Jamie, I remember hearing this when I was younger, and I heard it from people who were living a promiscuous lifestyle, and it was this: "Oh, I can't date you if you're not cool with me being friends with my ex, because you ain't mature, you ain't there yet."
Right.
That's a foolish, stupid thing.
Right.
But because you are designing relationships, you will take on vain philosophy. And that's a vain philosophy. So if you're not, wait a minute, that's your protocol, that's your standard.
Right.
So later on in life, if you're not careful with that, you can get roped into a relationship with someone who they need to be friends with their ex. And because you've been programmed to believe that you're not mature, it's your fault.
Right.
You're not there where I'm at. Something happens, now you're dealing with the pain of it. And rather than saying, no. Anybody you have dated or you've been with, that's an outsider. We're forming a relationship and we're forming a bond. Think of this as a house and a fence, and we're in here and nobody else is inside.
Right.
That's smart thinking, not the opposite way around.
Right.
Well,
you know what I mean?
You can't be mature because you say you want to be mature.
Right.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
I'm saying, because what you're saying is like, they're like,
They try to,
that's what people do.
They
like,
turn it on you.
Right.
Yeah.
They turn it on you.
You can't just say you're mature. Like,
But-
people think they're mature just because they want to be mature.
How many times have you heard this? Oh, you can't handle a strong woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's that same tactic. It's
Right.
like, I'm going to turn it on you because, no, you crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like,
Basically, that's what you're telling me.
crazy and damaged.
Yeah.
But this thing is, we gotta learn when someone says that. Those are an insight to who they are.
Right.
They're basically saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm chaotic,
Right.
and I'm a controller. So can you handle this?
Right.
You know."
But that's when you're like, no, I can't. But we could be friends.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm saying, because there's still an opportunity for people to change. You know.
Yeah.
But they need somebody.
You can't be with me, but you can change it from over there. Right.
But that's what I'm like. A lot of people, they're gauging you. Get away from me,
Right.
because this is what I desire.
Right.
If you can't handle it, don't be around me.
Right.
And it's like, so they're really just bringing their own stipulations. It's like, well, maybe I want to be around you, but maybe not in that capacity.
Right.
You know, and Some people don't know how to take that. Like it's always about connecting, truly with somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Because those hurt people, they're hurt,
Well, and it's also too recognizing within yourself what can come out of those type of dangerous philosophies, which is this. When someone said that to me, that what I just said earlier, it didn't make sense, but it started making sense when you become sexually active and you want to keep doors open, right? Because at that time it didn't make no sense. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Right.
But when you become sexually active and your desire is just sex, you're like, well, it does make sense now because I can keep that door open. I can keep that because remember you said friends, right? So we're going with your thing. So you can twist that if you're not careful, because then all of a sudden vain philosophies becomes. And you advance on it. You're like, well, hey, you got one friend, I got 6 friends. Is that cool? And they can't go back on that, but you're working on that. You're massaging that idea.
But all of that is passed along because what is happening is the girl is telling you that some guy did that to her. And now she's doing it to you.
To me. And then I'm going to take it.
You're going to one-up her.
Yes. And on and on and on.
Yeah.
But it all has to do with the intent of the heart.
Right.
You know what I mean? And on both ends. Because if you truly... What is your motive? Because if your motive is different, you're not going to want to be a part of that.
Right.
But if your motive is, if you're connected in any way in motives, then all good. You know?
Yeah, cool, man. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
2:20. We can go on and on about this for hours, as we have. So
you don't want to see us at Thanksgiving. Cut the turkey ready, man.
Shanika was.
She's
about,
in bed.
No, but when I came over the other day, she was like, "Yeah, I was trying to watch y'all last week because last week we did like 3 hours, right?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "I opened it back up. And I was like, they still talking."
Right. Oh yeah. No, she told me flat out she has limits.
Yeah.
On my.
On supporting your
no on those deep conversations.
Oh,
she's like, I could tell when I lose her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sophia, you need me. It's 4 a.m, baby.
She's sleeping.
Come back.
I think I heard something. Hey guys, still got some people in there watching. What's up?
You guys hung in there.
Yeah, man. Arjun Khan said hi. Tiffany said what's up. If you guys are watching, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening to us.
In there. Thanks for listening.
We're just trying to share our hearts with you guys,
Yeah, and like you said, there's not enough men that do this. Mm-hmm. So us doing it is showing an example of men who do. You know what I mean?
Right. And the one female standing in the gap with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Rota.
But hey, listen, we'll be back next week. In the meantime, you can go to the Patreon, all the things, YouTube, you can subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Website, jatan.com for merch and music. We got some good stuff coming up. We'll see you guys next week. We're out of here.
Peace out.
Yeah.
Young lion, go live, yeah. Young lion, you rich, yeah. This kingdom has room, yeah. Go and fight people ill.